This boy lifted the saint by the neck. After years of being used as a slave in an isekai world, she was about to erase his powers. But Minjun Kim had trained for years to obtain the most overpowered abilities. So he opened the portal himself, pointing his finger and saying he would never see that cursed saint again. But when he returned to his world, things were no longer the same. A dungeon had broken open and monsters had invaded. Now he's forced to join the army and fight once again. At least he came back with all his powers from the other world. The people of a city are joyfully celebrating the hero's presence. Mounted on his horse, the man in armor commands the scene for all of them. This citizen is being hailed by everyone as if he were the greatest hero of all time. Isgard is the name of this bizarre region. A little girl is also running through these streets, asking her brother to slow down a bit, but he's anxious to get to the parade, which is already ending, and his sister is getting tired. Annoyed, he warned her they should hurry, saying this without noticing another man on the same street. Finally, their paths crossed, and near this man, the boy stopped running. His sister finally caught up to him, but she doesn't know why he stopped. Until she finally noticed that man too, who walked past them quietly, ignoring the children. The girl was so distracted that she stared at the man, which made her brother tell her not to, because that person who passed them is a dark mage. The girl has no idea what that title means. Her brother assured her that he is a cursed man. Inside a tower within a castle, a woman is watching everything from the window. She watches intently until something catches her attention. That same dark mage who was walking the streets is now kneeling in her presence. She seems to be interested in this man's return. His name is Minold, and so far his face remains covered. He came to leave a human head for her. The last threat to Isgard has finally been eliminated. Full of enthusiasm, the woman wants to thank him on behalf of the entire empire. But the man says he doesn't want words. He is demanding that the woman fulfill her part of the deal. This must be done immediately. A bit more serious, she said she remembers it well, asking Minold not to worry. But she wants to know if she could call this young man Kim from now on. Once again, she explains that she didn't give him the dark mage class because she hated him. But the young man hates this saint for it, and he worked so hard that even the public's opinion of dark mages has changed. Even so, she has one last question to ask. If he really wants to return to his homeworld, Kim doesn't need to think twice, saying yes. He's been used enough, and he would like to return to his homeland. The saint sighs deeply. She wishes he would stay for the good of the empire. He could be rewarded for all the mistreatment he received, but Kim told her to stop acting. However, the saint insists she is being very sincere, which makes the young man ask what she is actually offering. But the saint didn't understand his question. Kim was brought to this land against his will and used like a slave. It seems he's supposed to stay here and keep wiping her ass. That's why he's asking what he'll get in return. The saint said she can give him whatever he desires, as the empire depends on him. Interrupting the saint's words, he asked for Korean fried chicken, but the woman has no idea what that is. He also asked for a typical side dish, weird noodles. Kim said the food in this place is garbage, and the saint promised she would try to improve it a bit. Showing great displeasure, he asked for a high-end computer with unlimited internet access, because he wants to go back to playing the RPG he was addicted to and would like to finish the game immediately. Outraged after hearing all this, the saint wants him to ask for something from this land, but in the midst of her outrage, she understood what was happening. With no way to convince him, the return ceremony will begin shortly. Kim was taken to another hall. It's been a long time since he first appeared there. He has good memories, even though he never wants to come back. The saint asked him to stand in the middle of the magic circle, the place where he first appeared. Finally, Kim is where he's supposed to be. The saint said she first needs to remove her protection from him, which makes Kim remove one of his gloves. He knows that, in reality, this protection is just a leash that prevents him from fighting this woman. Finally, he will have his freedom. The saint extinguished the mark on the young man's hand, saying she can't understand him, as he has gained incredible powers, fame, and influence he could never achieve otherwise, and he's giving it all up. Kim told the woman to mind her own business, saying she should worry about other things, because without that limitation, he could end her life. But the saint said she would accept it without a fight, as she was the one who started it all. Finally, the protection was removed. If he doesn't want to take revenge on her, the saint will begin the ceremony. Still looking at his own hand, Kim was speechless. The saint said she would remove the powers he received in this land, but an evil smile appeared on our boy's face. He attacked the saint, and she said it's dangerous for him to cross the dimensional gate with those powers. Now the saint is being held by the neck, and she has no idea what is happening. The protagonist said he worked too hard for these powers, that he wouldn't give them up so easily. Giving them up was a lie. Finally, the young man dropped the saint to the floor. She now understood his plans, and using dark magic, he won't be able to activate the gate. However, she was surprised by what happened next. He actually managed to open a gate using only dark magic. Desperate, the saint said he couldn't try to make this journey this way, and he knows it. That's why he practiced thousands of times, reaching the pinnacle of his power, saying the people of this place are strange, dividing magic between dark and light when it's all the same thing. Before leaving, he also said he had something to give her, flipping the middle finger directly at the saint. He said it was fun while it lasted, and he hopes to never see this bitch again. As he crosses through the gate, the saint told him to stop. A great wave of energy is now pouring out of that place. A huge, blinding flash of light until everything finally vanished. Completely furious, the saint punched the floor. She said she doesn't do it because she likes it, saying our boy is a psycho. Back in Korea, the protagonist's energy appeared in a window, shining intensely. His body is now inside an apartment. Having crossed through that portal, he seems to be quite out of breath. Feeling his body greatly weakened, he decided he would never travel that way again. But after catching his breath, the boy began to stand up. He carefully observes the inside of the room until a particular object caught his attention, a small cell phone, which is charging. This is the first object he interacts with. Kim said he missed this feeling so much. That really is his cell phone, and the boy opened the game he was obsessed with. He finally managed to return from that hell he was in. But there was something peculiar about the device. Our boy can't seem to connect to the internet. Outside, several soldiers are walking the streets. Some are taking cover in nearby buildings. They had advanced quite a bit, to the point where the observer said they should meet. One of the soldiers asks the corporal why they're on this mission, but he doesn't know either. They should ask the officers. Among them, one seems to be very tired. The platoon is just waiting for orders. Finally, they resumed their advance. The first one of them came out from behind the wall, prepared to attack the enemies, and his eyes went wide with surprise. It's been 2 years since our protagonist was summoned. Just remembering it makes him furious. At least his cell phone is still working, but our boy doesn't know why there's no internet signal in this neighborhood, so he's trying to look for it. Another weird thing is that none of the stores are open. The soldiers soon saw the civilian walking down the street. That area is off limits to them, and they're wondering what this idiot is doing. One of the soldiers spoke to our protagonist and told him to approach quickly. All of this makes our boy even more surprised, trying to understand why there are soldiers in this place. He thought it must be some very realistic training exercise and apologized, saying he was just passing through. But the soldier was even more forceful, telling the young man to run now. Our protagonist didn't realize there was a large creature heading his way. When he looked back, he saw the size of the problem that was approaching. But the creature only made our boy genuinely angry. He wants to know why this mutt that isn't even worthy of a punch decided to bother him. Before doing anything, Kim noticed something even more important. The demonic energy had completely vanished. Even so, he's not defenseless. He managed to grab the monster by its head, smashing the creature into the street's concrete. The soldiers saw this and were left completely speechless, because if there was any life left in that mutt, it was gone now. Kim called the dog a stupid creature. As he made sure to finish off the creature, the soldier was terrified. He's not some fucking loser just because he can't use magic. Even though he's weaker, he's not someone who can be easily beaten. Kim started to remember the strength training from the other world. It was excruciating, but now our boy is very intrigued, trying to understand what caused this type of creature to appear in his world. He started to get up, his hand stained with blood, terrifying the soldiers. Looking at one of them, he asked to be excused, but the terrified soldier told him not to come any closer. Later, they're all inside a military vehicle. No one knows what brought the young man to such a dangerous place. He could be arrested for this, but since the commander told them not to cause a scene, they're letting it slide. Until the soldier asked our boy if he really didn't know what was going on. Kim said no, he'd been traveling. He just didn't mention he was in another world. This isn't the Korea he knows, and he needs to find out what happened in the last 2 years. The dungeons appeared when he was 7. Bringing various monsters, but the soldiers took care of them. Along with them, the Awakened also appeared. They are much more powerful than an ordinary person. The Hunter Corporation was created to eradicate the monsters, and before he was summoned by that saint, Korea was at peace, with no risk of attack. Now our protagonist is trying to make sense of it all. His biggest concern is whether that game still works. His efforts over the past few years were solely to finish it, so our protagonist is hoping it still exists. The soldier can't understand how our boy knows nothing, since the entire world is in this situation. It's very suspicious, but after what he saw our boy do, he decided to relax a bit, until the protagonist called out to him. He asked if people managed to escape safely, like the developers of a certain game, and if it's possible to get a job in that field now, or if the servers were destroyed, explaining why things are in this state. The soldier is about to share what he knows. He learned a lot in college about monster theory, a very common subject these days. This is the reason why everything came to a standstill. 2 years ago, a strange phenomenon began to spread through the dungeons, and they started appearing much more frequently, and they got a lot bigger too. But that wasn't the real problem. It was the continuous increase of giant monsters that wouldn't stop pouring out of these places. Soon, the army could no longer control the situation, and some regions had to be quarantined. Our boy listened to all of this in complete shock. All he wants to know is if the game company still exists. The soldier asked the protagonist's age. Our boy believes he's 21. Knowing this, the soldier said he would have to enlist soon, and would spend the next few years in the army. Our boy found this strange, and the soldier explained that due to a shortage of personnel, everyone must serve for 5 years. Our protagonist was now devastated. All he wanted was to return to Korea and play games. Spending the next 5 years in the army was not part of his plan. Finally, he received something on his phone, a message from the government, telling him to report to the army soon. He asked the soldier if it was real, and got the reply, yes, it's very real. Our boy still can't accept reality. He has to enlist and he hasn't even had a physical exam. Not to mention he was notified just 1 day in advance. The message said he had to report tomorrow. The soldier explained they were short on people. He suggested that he go to the computer room at the evacuation center to confirm this information. Our protagonist did so, and remembered when his parents disappeared. He had locked himself in his house and just played games. He ended up being summoned to Isgard, without a single friend. Now he has returned to humanity's paradise, able to play the game he loved so much. That was the best feeling he'd had in years. As he eats, he orders more food from the waitress, who is impressed by the boy's appetite. But after a while, he went to confirm other things, realizing that it was all actually real. The damage caused by the monsters is increasing year after year, and people are getting more and more desperate. Now our protagonist really has to report to the army. If he were at the peak of his black mage powers, he could close all the dungeons immediately, but for some reason, he's not at his full strength. So our boy needs to think very carefully, and after reaching a conclusion, he shouted it out excitedly. The situation is now close to perfect, because he's going to solve this problem himself. The next day, our boy went to the designated battalion. He showed up there eating a skewer, noticing that there were many other people there. The young men there didn't look very happy, but our protagonist continues on his way. He noticed that sadness was abundant there. An announcement was made, telling all recruits to gather in the auditorium. Our boy is sure the army won't be as tough as Isgard. In the auditorium, the military officer started laying into the recruits with aggressive words. He told them to start pushing the person in front of them, as if he wanted them to fall into formation, which left the protagonist very surprised. He remembered his old trainer in the other world, and regretted not killing him before returning. The army instructors, compared to him, are excellent. Finally, one of the military officers called for everyone's attention. Before they began the program, recruits who wanted to join the hunter division were told to raise their hands. As they all know, the treatment for hunters is a bit better, and the base pay is 3 million. But none of the young men decided to step forward. The officer said it was just a formality, until one of his men called out to him. Unlike all the other times, there was a volunteer now, so they called our protagonist to the front. Our boy pushed off the ground with so much force that it cracked, leaping an absolutely absurd distance. None of the military personnel were expecting something so surprising. Now our boy had landed right next to the commander. Full of enthusiasm, Recruit Kim said he wants to be part of the hunter division. Back in Isgard, we take you to the forgotten Keanu. Amidst all those rocks, there is a deep cave. Our protagonist is saying that a black mage's work always ends turbulently. There is no one worse than him. Even with great skills, if his demonic power runs out, the end is certain. His power doesn't restore naturally like other mages. He needs to keep defeating monsters that have demonic energy. And that's not an efficient way to restore power. Because of his bad reputation, it's hard to find a group to work with. Now he has a question for his potential hostage. What would be the best way to restore this energy? Our boy carefully observes the bonfire before his eyes, but his hostages can't answer him, as they have all been defeated and killed. However, from among those creatures, something dangerous emerged. The forgotten boss of that cave, the giant spider. Our boy is still waiting for an answer. He had to wait a long time for it to appear, and he was getting very bored. The bodies of the spider's underlings decorate the entire cave. As soon as it noticed this, it began to roar furiously, seeking revenge. Our protagonist warned that this was the wrong answer. The great spider tried to attack him, but was stopped with just one hand. That was also the wrong answer. Finally, he will reveal the true answer to this question. After destroying the spider's head, he needs to defeat monsters with his maximum power. Back in the present, our boy is reporting to a superior in the army. He was instructed to wait in that spot until someone from the Hunter Corporation came to pick him up. The commander said our young man is very enthusiastic and wants to know if he has any special motivation for enlisting in the Hunter Division. Knowing the situation isn't good, our boy knows that people with abilities are returning to conventional divisions. However, he has business to settle in the dungeons. Hearing these words, the commander fell completely silent, certain that this young man was crazy. But since the army is made of abnormal people, he started to smile at this, saying the boy was very amusing, and because of that, he wouldn't charge him for the destruction caused to the auditorium floor. While sipping his coffee, the protagonist realizes he's actually serious. All dungeons in Korea are managed by the army, and the priority for clearing them belongs to the Hunter Corporation. It's a division of highly skilled individuals where one can advance through the ranks by earning gold. There are no restrictions on talent in this place. By joining this division, our protagonist will be able to enter dungeons, capable of clearing most of them by himself. By restoring his demonic power, he could also achieve a very high rank. This was all a product of his imagination, but at least our boy has a goal. He believes he can achieve 10 stars in 5 years by clearing every possible dungeon, becoming a national hero, with a hefty salary from the army. Finally, the sergeant of the Hunter Division arrived. His name is Seung-ho. The commander immediately introduced a new recruit. Our boy found it strange that he was being so formal with the sergeant. Looking at our protagonist, the sergeant asked if he possessed hunter abilities, because if he's had an awakening, he must have a status window, and the sergeant asked him to show it now. Our boy found this request odd, and began to wonder if all hunters were like this. But since he's in the army now, if he's asked to do something, he has to obey. In Isgard, he also had a status window, but our boy hardly ever used it. Now he wants to know how it works in Korea, but as soon as he opened the window, our boy was confused, and the sergeant told him to say what he was seeing. Not knowing how to choose his words, Kim said an error message appeared. Visibly disturbed by this information, the sergeant asked if the boy was joking. Back at the Hunter Training Center, in the battalion commander's office, the man said it had been a long time. It's been 10 years since they last met. He didn't think that person would ever return. He then asked the hunter to take a seat. However, the girl made it clear that she is still a recruit. She doesn't hold the title of hunter. And if she was called to this place because of her father, she made it clear she doesn't want any special treatment during training. The commander said he gave the wrong impression, that this has nothing to do with General Sun. This girl will not receive special treatment, and the corporation is not an easy place to get through. The girl started to feel embarrassed. But since a great talent like her enlisted, the commander was naturally interested. And before she gets busy, he has a few words of encouragement for her. It must have been difficult to enlist as a soldier, and not as an executive officer. Talented people like her are in short supply. The girl thanked him for the encouragement, but she was already getting quite embarrassed by his words. As the commander was talking, a jeep pulled up outside. He shared with the girl that he had received some amusing news that day. It's possible she might get a very interesting companion. He immediately asked if she would like to meet him too. Outside the large building stood our protagonist, visibly impressed. He can only think about how much public money was invested in this place. It's truly impressive. The sergeant told him not to get too excited, as his enlistment in this division hasn't been confirmed yet. Since he's a special case, he will be tested personally by the sergeant, and if it weren't for orders from above, he wouldn't have even brought the kid here. If he's deemed a liar, he'll be sent to the military police. Our boy doesn't even care about that. He just asked what the test would be. The sergeant then showed him a large object. If our protagonist can move it even an inch, he'll pass. He has 10 minutes to do it. That ore is the red stone, created in dungeons. It's extremely dense and exceptionally hard. A recruit could never move it. Our protagonist found this challenge very straightforward, and he's relieved that the test is so simple. But the sergeant isn't pleased with this overly confident attitude. To make matters worse, they can't see this recruit's stats, and many opportunists with mediocre abilities try to take advantage of this division. The sergeant knows our protagonist jumped 5 meters high, but he still doubts his stats, thinking he's just a liar. In the hall, the commander also appeared, accompanied by the talented recruit. He knows our protagonist has shown exceptional physical abilities, but his status window shows an error message. The commander has never heard of anything like this in his entire life, and has high expectations for our boy. Our boy immediately recognized the mineral. It was very abundant in Isgard, and it's extremely heavy, but if it's only that size, he can push it with ease. Our boy started preparing to hit the stone with a punch. The sergeant grew concerned. Even the talented female recruit was a little surprised. Kim is eager to destroy it, hoping to find some demonic energy. Finally, he threw his punch, and to the surprise of everyone present, the mineral began to crack completely. It had been shattered by the force of our protagonist. He is now lamenting that there was no demonic energy in the stone. The commander was visibly terrified after seeing that, a reaction shared by the sergeant, whose jaw dropped. The great red boulder had been destroyed. This is truly impressive. It seems this young recruit is an absolute monster. Later that same day, someone began to struggle badly with the run. This training is exhausting. Something feels wrong. Before enlisting in this division, Kim already knew the training wouldn't be easy, because right after preparation, they are sent into battle. It's 4 weeks of suffering, carrying their own body weight plus extra gear, and climbing a staircase with over 6,000 steps, all while being harassed by the sergeant, who is affectionately known as the Demon. The methods are truly cruel, and with these practices, their stats increase slightly. Our protagonist believed he had to endure all of this to become a hunter. At least, that's what the extra who looks like him was thinking. For our protagonist, this feels like summer camp. He is running up the stairs with great ease. His whole body feels very light. If he were at the peak of his power, he would be flying. This elite division training is way too easy. Besides, the uniform is much nicer than the one in Isgard. Not to mention, the meals in this place are absolutely amazing. And above all else, after a full day of instruction, he is rewarded with something wonderful. Free time to do whatever he wants. Our boy knows there's a computer room here, and if he follows all the rules, no one will bother him. The place is perfect. They let him exercise, feed him wonderful food, pay him a good salary, and he still has time to play games. Our boy is truly living the dream. As he runs, he says that the Hunter Corporation is the best there is. The other recruits can't believe it. The sergeant soon noticed something at the top of the stairs. The first recruit has just arrived, and he is full of determination. Reaching the top of the stairs, the sergeant saw that it was Kim. He is increasingly impressed with our boy. A recruit usually takes an hour to complete this run, but our protagonist did it in record time, not to mention the look of great enthusiasm on his face. Our boy came to claim his reward for finishing in under half an hour, as promised by the sergeant. And indeed, it happened. The sergeant handed him a small piece of paper. It's a leave pass. Kim is already trying to figure out how he'll spend it. Despite all this, the sergeant is very enthusiastic about the recruit's strength. He completed the run in just 21 minutes. No recruit in history has ever earned the reward before, but having strength is just the first step. The sergeant needs to find out if our boy will get scared in front of monsters. Having high expectations for him, the sergeant wants to keep observing this recruit. Back at the barracks, our protagonist's comrades are completely exhausted, but some of them seem to have gained attribute points. Everyone is checking the progress they've made. Our boy overheard their conversation. Some only received 1 point. He remembered that in Isgard, he would get 10 attribute points a day, and his instructor was the personification of cruelty. An extra noticed that our boy had received a leave pass and asked how he plans to use it, as they heard from the instructor that no one had ever gotten one before. Excited about our protagonist, they started asking if he exercises a lot because what he did was incredible. This friendly reaction felt strange to our boy. When he was a dark mage, people avoided him at all costs, thinking he might bring bad luck. Then the recruits mentioned the computer room, saying they are interested in using it. Upon learning this, the protagonist despaired. He couldn't believe this room was open. He finally got to use the computer. Since it was still 9 p.m., Kim decided he would only get 2 hours of rest. Back in Isgard, getting an hour of sleep during training was a luxury, and 2 hours was considered a deep sleep. Finally, our protagonist could satisfy his urge to play games. The next day, training returned to its grueling routine. The sergeant announced that anyone who didn't complete the 40-kilometer run in 2 hours would get no breakfast. Our protagonist was the only happy one there, having gained 10 levels while gaming. One of the recruits noticed Kim hadn't even broken a sweat. Our boy said it was just a walk. To make matters worse, he had spent the last 4 weeks sleeping only 2 hours a night, all just to keep playing. They were calling him a monster. Our boy said it wasn't that bad, and even brought water for his comrades. Several of them now gathered around the protagonist, hoping to get some water too. Just then, an authority figure appeared and called for the attention of all recruits. The lieutenant said he was disappointed in all of them. Even in the final week of training, only half had met the minimum standard. This was the worst squad in history. Our protagonist found it bizarre. The lieutenant was speaking in the third person. Continuing his speech, he said that half of the recruits would die in their first month. They lacked mental fortitude. At this rate, they would remain failures. The final stage of training is dungeon adjustment. This is a very interesting concept and deserves an explanation. Most dungeons disappear after the monsters are defeated, but some remain and become transformation dungeons. They become a good place for training because they feature a variety of environments. That's where the recruits are headed, for dungeon adjustment training. Inside that place, some recruits began to panic. The commander liked that. The recruits needed to learn to control their stress. He saw the recruits as racehorses. They needed discipline, and for that, a heavy hand was necessary, as well as rewards, to indoctrinate them. The lieutenant told them not to be afraid. If they used their heads, it would be nothing, and the recruit with the highest score would receive a 3-day leave. He expected this to motivate the whole platoon, but they remained disheartened. Once again, the lieutenant tried to motivate them, asking if they didn't want a few days off. The more he tried to cheer them up, the more apathetic the recruits became. Among them all, only one person was happy, our protagonist. Elsewhere, in an open field, the recruits were wondering why the area was so large. It's the passage to the training dungeon. They didn't know what was going to happen there. One of them thought it might be a camp. The poor guys were almost run over by an approaching truck. Looking at the vehicle, they began to wonder what it was doing there. Soon the recruits grew scared, and our protagonist realized what had caused it. Inside that truck, dangerous creatures were being transported. Those wolves had very sharp fangs. Seeing the creatures, the recruits were terrified. Only our protagonist remained calm. To him, those monsters were just small dogs, not worth worrying about. The lieutenant asked if they were really scared, because they would have to deal with this type of creature. Now they had to form teams of 4 to enter the dungeon. They had 1 hour to defeat one of those hounds. He recommended the recruits use their heads to win, not just their strength. Now they needed to prepare their equipment. The sergeant said they would be going in soon. Each of them was provided with armor, but it was heavy and its design was old. The recruits started putting it on. Our protagonist noticed it was made purely for protection and nothing else, but he could feel the energy of its previous users. Our boy didn't like that. It was filled with too much sweat and dedication. So he went to the lieutenant with a question. He wanted to know if he could take off the armor right after defeating the monsters. The lieutenant called him arrogant, but he soon realized he was talking to the most talented recruit and immediately changed his tune. Remembering something crucial, this was a team exercise. It was time to see how the #1 recruit would take care of his teammates. Looking at his potential teammates, our boy grew thoughtful. Those guys weren't confident at all. However, Kim had the perfect solution for that. He would teach his comrades how to defeat these hounds, so he asked them to listen carefully to his words. He said the hounds would attack them, and what they needed to do was grab one leg and the neck so they could bend it and break its spine. If it was still alive after that, they just had to rip the body in half, and the problem would be solved. But as he finished his explanation, he noticed no motivation in the recruits. The lieutenant ordered the wolves to be released. The cage they were in was opened. The creatures began to run out furiously. They headed straight into the dungeon. The recruits were surprised by this behavior, but our protagonist had expected the monsters to return home. His teammates were amazed by his intelligence. It was such an obvious conclusion, showing he understood monster psychology. But remembering his days in the other world, our boy had constantly longed to return. That's why he knew what the creatures would do. The lieutenant showed up to spoil the fun, telling the recruits not to relax just yet. It was finally decided. The protagonist's team would be the first to enter. His teammates did not like this assignment. The instructors began to signal the start of the task, and our boy's small group started walking toward the portal. Our protagonist was looking forward to it, as he wanted to remove this heavy, ugly armor as soon as possible. Using his communicator, the lieutenant contacted the instructor. He said the test had begun, and they needed to ensure the recruit's safety. Inside the dungeon, some instructors were hidden, ready to act if necessary. One of them was watching our protagonist's team closely. So far, there was only a single team of 4 recruits, and an instructor realized this wasn't just any group. Our protagonist was among them. His fame had spread among the instructors, as he possessed great physical abilities. His score had been perfect so far, but it remained to be seen how he would behave inside the dungeon. The group didn't know it yet, but they were already being cornered by the wolves. Kim had already noticed what was happening, sensing the creature's impatience. He could just end it all quickly, but that would prevent his teammates from gaining combat experience. Thinking himself a very kind and considerate person, Kim warned his comrades that the monsters were coming. From out of the shadows, the creatures began to advance. Our boy told his friends not to be afraid, because the armor was very strong. He decided he would take the lead, asking if anyone wanted to join him. The creatures were surrounding the group. One of them tried to tear a piece out of our protagonist, but he wasn't scared by this. He managed to strike the wolf immediately. That poor creature no longer had a soul in its body. One of the recruits got bitten on the arm and started screaming for help. While biting the poor guy, the wolf sensed something different. It was the approaching danger. Our protagonist kicked the creature in the ribs, forcibly removing the life from its body. Looking at the recruit, Kim said he needed to fight back if attacked. Being defenseless made him easy prey. If this situation were real, 2 people would already be dead. They needed to use their numerical advantage. By surrounding the wolf, they could terrify it until they found an opening to attack. The instructors observed all of this, impressed by the recruit's experience. He didn't even seem like a recruit. They noticed that those who were previously scared were now managing to overcome their fear, thanks to our protagonist's leadership. It was as if he already had combat experience, like he'd been a sergeant without them knowing. Furthermore, they realized our boy didn't solve everything with physical strength, but used his leadership to encourage his teammates. Coming out of the shadows, the instructors praised their work. Now the recruits could go outside. All our protagonist wanted to know was if he would be rewarded with the leave, but the instructor told him to shut up, as he wouldn't reveal that now. Noticing this aggression mixed with concern for the recruits, Kim thought that the instructors were a couple of tsunderes, but before they could cross through the gate, something happened. The whole place started shaking. The instructors tried to communicate with the outside. One of the recruits asks what that is, as it feels like an earthquake. Our boy says it's not that. This is a transformation dungeon, and it's changing right at this moment. While everyone is worried, Kim remains very calm, until one of the recruits started to get really scared. The exit from this place is disappearing. This is definitely a bad sign, and the recruits are now desperate. The instructors don't know what to do either. Only our protagonist kept his cool, even though he knew this could get very complicated. Everyone is now without communication. They weren't expecting the dungeon to transform at that moment. They need to get the recruits to a safe place. Everyone is gathered now, and the instructor announces that something unexpected has happened, but there's no reason to worry. They will wait here for an hour, as the exit gate should reappear. But for those recruits, staying in this dungeon for an hour could be very dangerous, and they are scared. One of the instructors tries to comfort them, saying the teams outside must be doing something too. That's why they need to stay calm. Our protagonist hears this but doesn't care. They only use this dungeon for training because they think it's predictable, and it's truly sinister to imagine that the gate, which was always open, has mysteriously closed. Still thinking about it, he noticed the instructors are talking in private, because they know the situation is definitely not good. Even though they appear calm, there's no protocol for this kind of situation. Fighting in a sealed dungeon could be even harder than they imagine. The only luck these people have is that our protagonist is here. The instructors continue to talk, and the place they're in has now transformed into a closed dungeon. The worst case scenario. The other instructor was quite frightened by this news. 2 things can happen when a portal closes. One is that the dungeon disappears. The second scenario is a closed dungeon. The gate vanishes once someone enters it. While they are in this place, they must defeat all the monsters if they want to return outside. This news left the big-eared instructor terrified, because there's no way for them to receive support from the outside. To make matters worse, in this group of 6, 4 have no battle experience. And if they want to survive, they must overcome these difficulties. Without knowing what monsters will appear, the risk is incredibly high, but they can't just stand around and do nothing. They need to move while they still have the strength. Everything would be different if the instructors had their gear. If they encounter goblins, it would already be very dangerous. So he's trying to think of the most efficient plan of action. For that, he'd have to use the student's armor, which is terrible for combat. Placing the recruits on the front lines would surely get them defeated. The instructor is still thinking about what he could do. So far, they've relied on the instructions received in the army, and he doesn't want to use the recruits to save his own life. It goes against his values. One of the recruits is lamenting, since something unexpected happened in the last week of training. While walking, our protagonist noticed something, and he's staring intently in one direction. This made an instructor ask if something had happened. Before our protagonist could answer, a creature's roar echoed through the cave, and that seemed to affect the instructor's mind. He suddenly started to feel sick, losing consciousness. His assistant went to help him, but our protagonist told him not to, because there's no way to save that instructor now. Our protagonist decided to step in, telling the recruits not to get close or they would end up the same way. He noticed that both instructors had just fainted, and he isn't surprised by it. Earlier, our boy had smelled a very familiar scent. He gathered the instructors' bodies and tossed them toward the recruits so they could take care of them. Kim told them not to follow him, ordering the recruits to stay near the exit. The bald recruit said this could be dangerous, that even the instructors had fainted. Our protagonist could die. He's completely insane. Yet Kim pushes even deeper into the place. The truth is, he's very excited. So excited he could die. What he felt in that place was demonic energy, and that's what took down the instructors. It's no surprise they fainted. because even the inhabitants of Isgard use special protection against this energy. It can be very fatal to humans, however. For black mages, this kind of energy is their battery. Finally, our boy found the source of it all. Inside that cave, the energy is getting more and more intense. The place is very quiet. Kim can't detect any trace of monsters in the area. Even so, he seems very pleased, because he had found a large creature by its scent, trying to hide in the shadows. Kim didn't expect to face a dark hound in this place. This type of creature existed in the other world, and it's much more powerful than conventional wolves. The first time the protagonist saw one, he had to run away, as he was a little scared. But the situation is very different now, and he's happy to see a familiar face. Our boy waits for the creature to approach. He executes just one strike against it, ready to absorb the demonic energy. The poor monster's existence was eliminated. After winning the battle, Kim said the smell of blood is still nauseating. Now demonic energy is flowing through the place. The Dark Hound is hard to beat because it releases a lot of demonic energy when defeated, which is dangerous enough to kill normal people. But for our protagonist, that energy is harmless, and even absorbing it, his body seems to be reacting strangely. Still, Kim is confident nothing will happen to him because he's a black mage. It was very gratifying for him to gather some energy after so long, but he doesn't know what a creature from the lands of Isgard is doing on Earth. Judging by the instructor's reaction, this is an unknown creature. During their training, they never mentioned demonic energy. It shouldn't be possible for these monsters to travel between worlds. Only the protagonist can do something like that. Or that saintess who summoned him. All of this is still very confusing. Something bigger might be happening. Looking for the creature's body, Kim realized he would have to write a report. Near the exit, the instructors are still unconscious, until one of them finally started to open his eyes, realizing he was surrounded by the recruits. The sergeant woke up, quite startled. He wants to know if his comrades are okay, as he doesn't know what happened. The bald recruit said the protagonist went into the dungeon alone, which worried the sergeant. After being updated on everything, he was very upset about what happened. What the recruit did is extremely dangerous. This kind of reckless behavior is enough to get the protagonist kicked out of the army, but the situation is so complicated, it would be difficult to do that now. Thinking about all the variables, one of the recruits called for the instructor's attention. Our protagonist is returning, carrying the body of the large dark hound. The instructors were surprised by this, as they had never seen a hound like that before. Kim told them to examine the creature. The sergeant is wondering if it was responsible for making them pass out, and most likely, the answer is yes. The recruits can't believe our protagonist did that alone. While our boy listens to all this, a mysterious glow appeared. It's the dungeon gate. They can finally leave. Visibly surprised, the instructor asked if the protagonist did it all by himself. Our boy just answered with a sincere smile, and the sergeant understood what had happened. He told his partner to take the recruits first, saying he would follow shortly. The sergeant waits patiently to be alone with our protagonist. He instructed Kim to report everything that happened to the lieutenant. He also told him not to leave anything out, not even the instructor's incompetence. Since they passed out, they put everyone in danger. There's no excuse for that. Everyone is only safe because of the protagonist's efforts, and the sergeant appreciates it. But our protagonist was quite embarrassed by this speech. The sergeant said that a man needs to admit when he's done wrong, and since he was unconscious, he doesn't know what to put in his report. He definitely won't be able to sleep tonight. Our protagonist didn't expect to receive so many compliments in the last week of training. Before he could try to head outside, something appeared before him. It's the system screen, which said the error has been resolved. But our boy doesn't understand this news, as he also doesn't know what was wrong in the first place. This made him curse the system, which is simply ridiculous. But looking at his stats, he noticed he has 60 points in everything, and 10 points of demonic energy. His corruption skill is at level E. Our boy found that very strange. He still doesn't understand what this status window is, much less the title he received. Luna Nuna is my favorite character. He is the creator of this cult. She's a character from his favorite game, and when he was in Isgard, he created this cult as a joke, just to get rid of his weird admirers, but that only attracted more strange people. Looking at his stats, Kim realized he had become much weaker. That score was worse than he expected. He knew he had lost all his demonic energy. I was already expecting to be punished for the dimensional travel. From his long list of skills, only one remained, and its level was very low. This wasn't what he was hoping for at all. This situation is so absurd that our protagonist feels like throwing up. In his current state, he won't be able to achieve his goals. However, he can still get strong in this situation. He's reached the pinnacle once, and he can do it again. What he needs now is to immediately recover his power to protect the large company that develops his games. Our protagonist realized this is possible. It's very different from the hardships he had to overcome in Isgard. Outside, on that same day, The training center is in chaos. No one expected the dungeon to close during the training exercise. To make matters worse, a recruit managed to defeat a new type of monster, while the instructors couldn't do anything. This disrupted the graduation for all of them, and now they're stuck at the training center. Some of them want to know what our protagonist did in there, and the bald guy tells them everything in detail. They believe our protagonist will be promoted soon, and in the commander's office, he was summoned to report. The commander receives him very politely, while the lieutenant is being punished in the same room. Now that he has a visitor, the commander has released the lieutenant from his punishment. Our protagonist is now alone with his superior. The commander stated that a lieutenant who fails to perform a safety inspection must be punished. However, the old man wants to get straight to the point. He summoned our protagonist there to tell him something. Since he was the top performer in this course, the commander has a proposal for him and wants to know if the young man is interested. A heron among chickens. You don't have to be a genius to figure out this terrible analogy is meant to describe our protagonist. A person far better than those around him, and the commander knows he's in the presence of an exceptional human being. He feels lucky to have lived to see something like this with his own eyes. He never thought he'd find a prodigy among those people. Our protagonist is still waiting to hear the proposal. To the commander, it would be a loss for the nation if such talent were ignored. He knows the protagonist wants to advance as quickly as possible. According to the rules, recruits must wait a year to be promoted. But since he is an exceptional case, the story is completely different. If he wants to serve in Gangwon, the commander will use all his authority to make this exception happen, ensuring that if our protagonist goes there, he won't have to wait. Kim remained silent after hearing this proposal. The commander realized that perhaps it wasn't a very interesting offer, as the region might not appeal to our boy. But there's something Kim is trying to understand right now. His comrades told him to avoid the 104th Division at all costs. The place is very cold, and dungeons can appear at any moment. It's the most extreme place there is. Kim realized this was the perfect opportunity. If he can keep advancing, it doesn't matter where he is, and since he's been promised a promotion, it's even better. To achieve his goals, our protagonist needs to get stronger, fast, so he accepted the proposal. The commander, disappointed, asked where our boy would like to go. Only then did he realize he had agreed to the proposal. Kim said once more that he would go straight to Cheorwan. Finally, his class is leaving the training center. The bald recruit is very emotional. He wants to stay in touch with our protagonist. Kim thinks the bald guy is just emotional now and definitely won't keep in touch. But the recruit, full of emotion, promised he would. Wiping away his tears, he asked Kim if he was really going to Cheorwan. Kim said that his comrades don't know yet, but he has great goals to achieve in life. And after a brief chat, they finally said their goodbyes. Kim noticed that his loudest comrade had finally left. Now he was completely alone in that place. But not for long. A large truck pulled up and stopped in front of our boy. Someone got out and asked if he was Recruit Kim, a huge soldier with scars on his face. He said he was a bit late because of heavy snow on the way. Our protagonist was surprised by this, since it wasn't supposed to snow at this time of year. The soldier told our boy to get in the truck, as they were leaving immediately. In the back, our boy is waiting for the journey to begin. His life as a soldier was finally about to start. He doesn't care about the hardships or the possibility of facing monsters frequently. There's only one thing that worries him. Kim doesn't want to go through any hazing, and he's thinking he might have to endure it, which would be very bad since he doesn't have much patience. Sighing deeply, he realized he would just have to put up with it for now. As the journey continued, he realized that disrespecting a superior could end his career. Our boy noticed that snow was starting to fall. In that region, home to the 2nd Battalion, the weather seems very different. Inside a public building, he is following the huge soldier who led him to a specific room. Shoving our boy inside, he announced that he was the rookie. He told the other soldiers to feed and instruct this poor soul. Some of them were very enthusiastic about the presence of a rookie. They started bombarding our boy with questions, and upon learning his name was Kim, they realized he was the prodigy from the rumors. Grabbing our boy's backpack, one of the soldiers told his buddy to empty it. Kim is very nervous, wondering if he's been approached by the 2 dominant soldiers of the barracks. They're looking at him with great admiration, as if they've just received a new toy. One of them asked why our boy came here. With his score, he could have gone to any battalion. Kim said he heard this place was great for gaining experience, and the fastest way to get promoted. His new colleagues fell silent, but they liked that answer, saying the rookie was an interesting psycho. They quickly asked if our boy had a pretty sister or a girlfriend, but they found out he's all alone. A real unlucky guy. They also asked him to show off his talent, and Kim thought about showing them a little something. He said he would show them he could do a 1-finger push-up. The sergeant didn't like that, claiming he could do those all day. His friend told him to calm down and let the rookie show what he could do. The truth is, They were stunned. Our boy was really using just a single finger, doing a handstand push-up. Those soldiers were not expecting something like that. No one in that platoon is capable of doing what our boy just did. And while they were entertained, someone else arrived, another rather menacing soldier, telling the others to knock it off. The red-haired guy said his colleague had ruined the fun, and looking back, Kim recognized that voice because in his company is Sergeant Lee. The protagonist has a good memory because I have no idea who this guy is. The other residents of the barracks are saying the sergeant always spoils their fun. They mentioned he got a few days of leave for tormenting the rookies. Outraged, the sergeant shot back that it was only 4 days. The others muttered that he was a killjoy. Furious, the sergeant threatened to beat those clowns if he got any more annoyed. But now that he was inside the barracks, he lay down comfortably on the floor, and the first thing he decided to do was look at his phone. He seems to be looking at news about the dungeons. Our boy noticed the space was small, but there was a huge difference between the ranks. The sergeant called out for one of the soldiers, Dong-jin, who immediately reported to him. The poor guy was assigned the responsibility of showing the protagonist around. Kim is surprised to meet his senior. Dong-jin introduced himself very politely, but as he got closer, he whispered to our protagonist that they should go get some food, as he had special permission to visit the mess hall. Leading our boy to the place, he said he could take whatever he wanted. Kim said he eats a lot, but his colleague assured him he could eat without worrying. Unfortunately for Dong-jin, he's going to have to pay 3,500 coins for this, thanks to the kindness he offered. While they were eating, Kim asked if they could buy that kind of food regularly or if they needed special permission. Dong-jin explained that here, recruits and privates first class can only go to that place on weekends, and only corporals and above can use the computer room. This news really caught our boy's attention. Dong-jin said the rules are a bit strict, but a private first class like him knows how to deal with it. You just have to get used to it. Quite worried, Kim asked if there was any way to change the situation. His new colleague said he needed to get promoted, but it wasn't an easy task. Kim realized he would have to work very hard. Now he was interested in getting promoted. Dong-jin said, becoming a sergeant is no easy feat. He had failed the exam a few times and had already been a soldier for 3 years. But he was immediately comforted by our protagonist, who decided to help this comrade out once he got promoted too. Other soldiers approached them, wanting to meet the new guy. They quickly noticed the delicious food. One of them was Corporal Roberval, enough Korean names for one day, and Dong-jin offered him some of the food. Roberval didn't think twice and started eating like an animal. Our boy found the presence of this weirdo strange. Roberval said he wouldn't tell anyone they were there, but if they were useless in tomorrow's training, they'd be dead. Dong-jin mentioned he was just about to teach the rookie about the upcoming training, since things were different here. From the way he said it, Roberval thought Dong-jin was being dismissive. Our boy started to get annoyed by this behavior. He was ready to teach him a lesson. Using the dark energy, he decided to make Roberval sick. In just a few seconds, Roberval's stomach went into turmoil. He realized it was too late. Unfortunately, he crapped his pants. Looking at the food, he thought it might have been spoiled. When asked what happened, Roberval said it was nothing, and told the two of them to return immediately. Our boy realized his corruption ability could still be very useful. Now, he wanted to know what the firearms training would be like the next day. They would be using the Army's standard rifle, with special, really powerful bullets. A normal weapon produces a lot of recoil, but the ones they use here have even more recoil, and the noise is insane. Since monsters appear frequently here, it's important to have good firepower. It can be tough at first, so Kim should expect to get chewed out a few times. Thinking about the analogy used to explain it, the kick of a pony versus the kick of a stallion, Kim understood the concept perfectly. The weapons he used back in Isgard had a massive recoil, comparable to an elephant. So, he was very much looking forward to the next day's training. Finally, the entire troop was being led to the training grounds. Shots were already being fired. Soldiers were in position, firing at their targets. One among them seemed to have hit almost every shot. Kim started to regret missing just one. The supervisor counted 19 hits and only 1 miss. The other soldiers in our boy's platoon were stunned. A rookie managed to hit 19 shots. That was an impressive score for all of them. The red-haired guy's record was 14, which was already above the squad's average. High up in a tower, the superiors were observing everything. They were impressed with our protagonist's performance. Other soldiers wanted to know how Kim did it. Our boy replied that he just did as he was taught. The supervisor confirmed that Kim was exceptional and asked him to keep showing off his talent. He wanted to see him shoot that very afternoon during the special firearms training. The red-haired guy was excited about this, but another soldier asked if the sergeant wasn't rushing things a bit. Thanks to his great performance, Our boy had earned the admiration of all his peers. However, Kim wanted to know what was different about the special training. Dongjin had only heard a little about it. He admitted he wasn't expecting our protagonist to be such a good shot. Not everyone there had done the special training. What he knew was that 2 trainees participated, and they had to eliminate monsters along a route. Even if they weren't that dangerous, they were moving targets that could fight back. They also had to avoid hitting special targets that represented civilians. Hitting one would cause automatic elimination. Dongjin told our boy not to worry about the monsters, as the training was supervised. Knowing he would be facing live creatures, Kim became even more enthusiastic. Now that everyone was in the mess hall, the soldiers could enjoy a nice meal. Dongjin was still very impressed with our protagonist's performance. Kim mentioned his partner was also very good, having hit 3 shots. Dongjin replied that he had experience, but technically, he wasn't that good. Unlike Sergeant Lee, who is truly exceptional. He usually hits 17 shots. He's number 1 in the squad. Kim knew the average was only 10 hits, which meant he must be the new number 1. Dongjin believed that our protagonist would also do great in the special training. Kim had a few questions about this training. Since it was a team exercise, he'd like to be paired with Dongjin, but the officers choose the teams. The poor soldier couldn't guarantee anything. Rumor had it that the partners were chosen by lottery. Finally, our boy was taken to where the special training took place. A sergeant announced that the training would begin in 5 minutes, and everyone should be ready by then. The protagonist was putting on his gear. Someone walked up to him, mentioning he'd been paired with a rookie. It was Roberval, that asshole, who believed he was much better than our boy. Kim didn't expect to be paired with such an asshole, and from the look on this guy's face, he still hadn't learned his lesson. Roberval stated that the squad's average completion time for this exercise was 3 minutes, and he suggested the rookie better improve on that. He asserted that if Kim wasn't capable of that, he would regret it. But our boy couldn't feel intimidated by someone so weak. Roberval noticed the silence and asked if the rookie had lost all his confidence. Kim realized Roberval was a lost cause and told him he would try to do better in this exercise. Roberval said he didn't care about trying. He only wanted results. If the kid finished after him, he was dead. He told our protagonist to watch what the sergeant was doing with the other pair, as they were about to start the exercise. The 2 soldiers were already in position. Both were sergeants, and they were ready. The pair was taken to the lower floor, where the training takes place. This is a tactical training exercise to defeat monsters while protecting innocent people. But in practice, it had turned into a competition among soldiers to see who could finish the fastest, by hitting the completion button before their opponent. The other soldiers watched the competition intently. Kim noticed that the icon representing the monster varied in size. Roberval explained that it depends on the creature. The bigger the icon, the greater the danger. 2 monsters are placed in each lane, and what they encounter is completely random. The soldiers don't know what they'll have to face until they're right in front of it. One of the men encountered a large frog. The creature tried to attack him with its tongue, but he dodged it. The other soldier seemed to be moving faster. Our protagonist realized that the monster's strength could directly impact this task. The soldier who was moving faster had to kill a rat, and he believed his victory would be easy. Now he could move on to the next stage, but to his surprise, he encountered a gigantic worm. The damn frog on the other side was already taking multiple shots. The soldier who defeated it had to do it twice and was already very annoyed. He finally managed to reach the exercise completion button, and he pressed it with ease. The exercise was completed in 2 minutes and 24 seconds. The other soldiers were very excited about this, and they learned that the giant worm had delayed the other guy. Even though he had defeated the creature, the guy couldn't complete the exercise in the time he wanted, and besides being late, he had hit one of the forbidden targets, so he would have been disqualified anyway. While the 2 who took the test were arguing, Roberval noticed they had made a bet. This part piqued the protagonist's interest. He suggested that he and Roberval make a bet too. The suggestion was that the loser would grant the winner 1 wish on his word of honor. Roberval found this very amusing. The rookie was full of confidence, so he decided to agree. He said his wishes couldn't be granted by a mere rookie, so he told our protagonist he'd have to give him his salary for 3 months. Kim was surprised that this man only wanted money, something so predictable, so he guaranteed that if he lost, he would hand over his salary. Dongjin noticed the tension between the 2 was rising sharply. That's why he was worried about our protagonist. The sergeant called for the next pair. It was time to continue the training. Kim was ready to humiliate the extra. The elevators began to descend. They were being taken to another floor. Kim admitted that he had given in to Roberval's cheap provocation, but he wasn't mature enough to handle that kind of thing. Every time he's provoked, our boy ends up giving in. Finally, the test began. The platoon knew the 2 had made a bet, and they didn't believe the protagonist would win. Dongjin watched it all quite frightened. Where he and the other soldiers were, everything started to shake. While some panicked, Dongjin said it wasn't an earthquake. One of the monsters started moving during the exercise. Our protagonist also didn't know what that tremor was. Only then did he realize what was in his path. A large demonic creature had completely devoured the first monster he was supposed to defeat. Kim had no idea what was happening, and the huge monster started looking at him, seeing our protagonist as just another snack. The large demonic creature decided to attack him. It threw the rat it was savoring toward our boy. Kim did not like having to dodge that at all. He knew that night's meal would be fried chicken, and he wanted to end this training immediately, thinking of his reward. Kim knew he couldn't hit the forbidden targets. Shooting without caution could be dangerous, and the creature also seemed very angry. So Kim decided to use his abilities, striking the creature with his demonic strength. The evil energy began to spread through its body, completely destroying the threatening monster's arm. Now that the creature was in pain, Kim could shoot it without any trouble. However, he noticed something even more interesting. That enormous creature was capable of regenerating its own limbs, transforming its damaged arm into a large blade. Our protagonist seemed to be stuck on that challenge. The extras wanted to know what had happened. An accident could be underway. Meanwhile, Roberval continued to advance calmly. The sergeant was terrified. He believed that the large monster must be the Cyclops, also known as the Devourer Demon. When it consumes an energy source, its regeneration greatly increases. But something even stranger was happening. The Cyclops only attacks when it's in danger, and it grew even stronger after devouring the other creature. Now he was wondering what our protagonist did to provoke the monster. All this while Kim calmly dodged all of its attacks. The creature was determined to finish him off. Kim knew it would be easier to solve this with violence, but he was given a rifle, so he had to use this tool to complete the task. He fired several shots at the creature's head, which now couldn't see out of its eye. Kim noticed that the regeneration of this organ would be a bit slower. The monster couldn't see a thing. Even so, it tried to strike out into the void. Kim was almost hit in the neck by one of these blows. He was impressed by the creature's awareness, even though it was blind. But that kind of technique wasn't enough to hit him. Our boy managed to dodge. This made the Cyclops attack even more fiercely, even with its eye completely useless. The protagonist caught the creature's final blow. Now he's wondering why such a dangerous creature was placed in this training. It might be reacting to our boy's demonic energy. Knowing the danger, the sergeant went down to the training ground to check the situation. This was a complete catastrophe, and it shouldn't have happened to the rookie. The sergeant felt responsible for what happened, as a recruit is not capable of defeating a creature like that. As he rushed forward in desperation, he prayed to God that our protagonist would stay alive. On the other side, Roberval continued to advance calmly. He finished the test and believed our protagonist wouldn't be able to beat him. At just over 2 minutes and 30 seconds, he believed he could never lose. Now he was thinking about how he would spend his extra money. But as soon as he reached the end of the training, he realized our protagonist was already there. Kim looked very surprised by Roberval's arrival. With a malicious smile on his face, our protagonist slowly pressed the button. Roberval simply couldn't believe it. Back to the sergeant, he finally found the creature, and he was trying to understand how the recruit managed to defeat it. Upon returning to the rest of the platoon, everyone was congratulating our protagonist. He completed the task in a very satisfactory time. Besides, he defeated a Cyclops all by himself. Some thought a disaster was about to happen. Dongjin was very worried and asked if our protagonist had been injured during the test, but Kim assured him everything was fine. This left his friends quite relieved, and while he was being admired, Roberval fumed. Then someone remembered they had made a bet, and the rookie was the winner. Still furious, Roberval slapped this extra. He said the situation wasn't fair, so the bet should be called off. Roberval said he could never have finished faster than the rookie. He had to defeat 2 monsters, while the rookie only had to defeat 1. Because of this, he was trying to use the situation to invalidate the bet. He tried to tell everyone it was unfair, demanding a response from the protagonist and his friend. Dongjin didn't know what to say in this situation, and he continued to be pressured by Roberval, who had decided to be a complete jerk. Kim realized this type of person is the worst you can find. Remembering the battle, he didn't feel good about defeating the monster with just his hands, and was already willing to ignore the bet. But if Roberval was going to act like that, it couldn't be ignored. In the middle of their argument, the sergeant decided to approach. He said Roberval should be ashamed of what he said, as the rookie took a much greater risk. Not knowing who said it, Roberval told the jerk to shut up. One of the soldiers mentioned that the Cyclops was strengthened, and everyone there knew the rookie faced a much greater danger than Roberval did. Everyone was silent now, because Sergeant Lee had appeared to resolve the situation. In front of him, Roberval chose to remain silent. He asked if the sergeant was trying to show off for the rookies. In response, Lee said Roberval was the one doing that. Even so, the jerk continued to act self-righteous, claiming it was just a joke. Lee said Roberval always acts the same way. When things don't go his way, he throws a fit. He said Roberval must really enjoy feeling superior to others because he's useless. Kim really enjoyed this humiliation session. Meanwhile, Roberval looked like he was about to have a stroke. Lee wanted to know if Roberval still had anything to say, but after being completely humiliated, he chose to stay quiet. And again, Lee said that was the right thing to do, because he shouldn't be proud of what happened. Later that day, someone mentioned that Sergeant Lee had been promoted twice. It was a special situation because he had the best grades there. However, that's no longer possible. A sergeant who was promoted that way caused problems in a dungeon. Lee was one of the last to be promoted like that. Kim wanted to know if he could still get a special promotion. His friend informed him that there are special exceptions, like saving people in emergencies, or if he has an exceptional performance during a hunt, but all these situations are subjective. Knowing this, Kim understood that the commander has the final say. Even though he really wants to be promoted, he doesn't want to see people in danger. 2 days as a recruit is more than enough. Our boy wants to be promoted as soon as possible. He just wished a gate would appear out of nowhere. At that very moment, an alarm sounded. It's an emergency alert. A large number of dangerous bats has appeared at the oil reserve. All hunters must prepare to provide protection. This news brought great joy to our boy. These bats are the size of a fat child, live in flocks, and are very agile. They are also capable of spitting fire from their mouths. So, since they appeared in a place full of oil, the emergency is real, as an explosion could happen. The soldiers guarding the place are terrified of the creatures. One of them is about to shoot, but another soldier said it's dangerous because there's a lot of flammable material there. But the soldier with the rifle didn't want to just stand there and do nothing. Still, they need to be cautious. Help should be arriving soon. There's a danger that the place could catch fire if the creatures decide to spit fire. The soldier realized there was nothing they could do about it. Watching the creatures fly through the air, they don't know what to do. Another soldier among them said he would get the creatures' attention. They soon realized they were talking to our protagonist, the rookie full of potential. Noticing he was without gear, they grew very concerned, but our boy had no time for that. He sees the bats as special guests who will help him get promoted. Our boy is ready to claim those experience points, manifesting his demonic energy. He recalled the battle he had against that giant cyclops. The bats, compared to it, are absolutely nothing. Besides, they seem to be drawn to his demonic energy, so our boy started to attract them. Other soldiers were approaching the location, carrying heavy equipment as they set up a defensive operation, but one of the men suddenly stopped in his tracks. His companion finally understood why he had stopped. The soldiers coming from behind urged them to keep moving. It was only then that they realized our protagonist was already handling the bats. The sergeant was furious with the situation. While the rookie was attracting the attention of dangerous creatures, those soldiers just stood there doing nothing. Our protagonist continues to take down the monsters. It's a slow process, since he has to kill them one by one with his bare hands. Then, someone decided to call out to him, calling our boy a maniac. As the soldier approached, he told our protagonist to get down immediately, warning him that what he was doing was extremely dangerous. But our protagonist isn't interested in obeying. He wants to finish off every single bat. Then he noticed his fellow soldier is carrying a weapon. That could help a lot. Kim used his dark energy on the poor guy's stomach, which immediately destroyed his own underwear. Kim asked the sergeant who had fallen to the ground if he was okay, and then asked for his weapon. Our protagonist said everything would be fine, because with that weapon in hand, it would all be over quickly. Knowing the Tonfa had an electric charge, Kim was ready to have some real fun. It was time to end these creatures' lives. Using all his agility, he managed to hit several bats at once. Fighting with a weapon was actually a lot of fun. The sergeant observed everything attentively, completely impressed with our boy, who had managed to annihilate the bats so quickly. However, one of the soldiers noticed a creature doing something dangerous. That bat was preparing to launch a fireball at them. It seemed the creature had decided to become Hell's ambassador. Knowing the situation was critical, the sergeant told the soldiers to shoot the monster, yelling that he would take full responsibility. Immediately, a soldier readied his rifle, but before he could fire, something bizarre happened. Our protagonist was already on the creature's back, ready to send it to Neverland. The poor bat never knew what hit it. It was electrocuted while its skull was being crushed. None of the soldiers understood how our protagonist had managed to get up so high. After that major event, the soldiers managed to turn on a machine that created a force field around the entire oil reservoir. The area was finally secure, and the bats were all dead. Someone called out for Sergeant Lee. The officer who approached congratulated him on the executed mission, but wanted to know where the bats came from, since the radars gave no warning. This officer also mentioned he didn't like the smell of burnt bats. He learned from the sergeant that they had defeated 30 creatures. To make matters worse, the commander was absent, and this emergency had occurred during that time. Lee knew he should have been in the control center, monitoring the radar. The petulant captain tried to pin the responsibility for the burned bats on the sergeant, but Lee denied it. The captain was surprised and asked who could be so skilled with an electric tonfa. Lee explained that a single soldier was responsible for everything, and that it should be in the report. The captain couldn't believe it, and demanded to know who was responsible for such a grand feat. Our protagonist went to the sergeant to return the instrument he had borrowed, but unfortunately, the tonfa was destroyed while being used. The next day, the commander decided to have a talk with our protagonist. He wanted to know if he was settling in well this second time around. His performance was so absurd that the commander asked if he was a regressor, but our boy said no. Now that he had his answer, the officer asked him not to do anything so reckless again, emphasizing how dangerous it had been. As hunters, they never know what could happen. Kim knows his success had nothing to do with luck, but he decided to keep his mouth shut. The Hunter Corps is a special division with only 4 battalions, and everything about them is different. Our protagonist has no idea why he's being told all of this. The sergeant asked if our boy knew why this was all possible, but he had no answer. Lee explained that every single soldier in the Corps is one of the awakened. Not all of them are sent into battle. Some officers are in charge of intelligence and administration. Our boy remembered seeing one of those officers in the battalion. But even the administrative staff consists of awakened, and the only way to get promoted in this place is through talent and hard work. Our boy was summoned to the commander's office that day. He was hoping for good news, but was met with a long lecture instead. Lee noticed the kid was expecting something positive, so he told him to keep up the hard work. He then revealed that on that very day, the hunter responsible for defeating the most monsters in all of Korea would be visiting their battalion. The car tasked with bringing him to the base finally arrived. A large bearded soldier presented himself to the battalion. Colonel Gonzaga greeted the hairy combatant with great enthusiasm. All of the battalion's officers were there to welcome him as well. They were proud to host someone so distinguished in combat. The bearded combatant had heard about the previous day's incident and congratulated the troops on their excellent work. Our protagonist was very curious. He wanted to know just how strong this bearded combatant was. The man now walked up to our protagonist, asking if he was the promising recruit everyone was talking about. Kim realized the man's handshake was incredibly strong. After the formal introductions, the bearded combatant asked everyone to relax, assuring them he wasn't there to cause any trouble. He immediately asked if they had found out which gate the bats came from. An officer reported it was the north gate, which was already being sealed. The bearded combatant also knew there had been a radar issue. The commanding officer explained it wasn't a failure, but there might be blind spots. The bearded man said they should look into it, and the officer promised a full inspection. The atmosphere grew tense again. Turning to our protagonist, the bearded man praised his courage, but advised the young man to be more cautious and bring equipment next time. Our boy apologized for his mistake, thinking to himself that if he'd had proper gear, he would have just set everything on fire. The bearded man told our protagonist there was no need to apologize. It was just a friendly comment. In fact, he was impressed that our boy had defeated 30 bats all by himself. If it hadn't been for his quick reaction, a disaster could have occurred. In front of all the officers, he commended our boy for his bravery. He then presented him with a small gift, his long-awaited promotion. Normally, this would require a lot of red tape, but thanks to his actions, the promotion was more than deserved. The bearded man then told the battalion commander to give our boy a few days of vacation, saying he had earned it. Kim was overjoyed, not just about the promotion, but also about the unexpected vacation. He realized military life was like a permanent recess. Walking down the corridors, our boy was beaming with happiness. His friend congratulated him on the promotion and for the courage he had shown during the battle. Our boy happily accepted his friend's kind words. This was his first time going outside since he enlisted. His friend asked him what he planned to do now. Our boy had only one thing on his mind. The first thing he does is look for a place where he can play his favorite game. He can't go back home because it's in a restricted area with no internet. That's why he plans to spend his entire leave at that shop, making sure not to waste a single moment. Before going inside, it seems an extra ran into a long-lost friend. He was complaining about the soldiers, saying he wanted to enter a secluded area to gather mushrooms. He was upset about being stopped, claiming he already had permission from the mountain's owner. The strange man's friend told him he was looking for trouble, as that mountain was extremely dangerous. Even so, the guy believed he could get in if he wore a mask. Our protagonist, who overheard their conversation, asked which mountain he wanted to go to. The men were startled at first, but it seems our boy is about to do them a favor. Our protagonist thanked them for the ride. They explained they couldn't go any further, or they'd be stopped by the soldiers. They asked if our boy could solve the mountain's problem. Kim assured them that the restriction would be lifted the next day. No problem. The men quickly glanced at our guy's rank, but since it was so low, they weren't very confident. As they left, they simply wished him luck. Our protagonist could feel the demonic energy everywhere. This was much better than just sitting around playing games. To him, the scent was very familiar. It's time to get a little stronger. Inside the mountain, soldiers were wearing protective masks. Our protagonist infiltrated with ease. The security here wasn't very good. Still, he didn't want to be identified, so he had to be extremely cautious. Using his demonic energy, he made the two soldiers crap their pants. A desperate situation. No grown man ever wants to go through that in his life. Believing that no one would show up, they decided to take care of their immediate problem. This gave our protagonist the opportunity to enter the cave. He did so immediately, as soon as the path was clear. Now he could explore the area without being disturbed. But to his surprise, he couldn't sense the presence of any monsters inside the cave. So, he needed to find out why the demonic energy here was so intense. Even without an answer, our boy began to absorb all the energy in the area. Gradually, the system began to recognize his power increasing point by point. The protagonist was thrilled with this news. Now that he had absorbed more demonic energy, his corruption ability improved. He also unlocked the Nightwalker ability. As soon as he was notified, our boy was genuinely thrilled. Besides receiving that energy, Kim also gained another one of the abilities he had in the other world. Shadow Walker is a summon, a creature made of darkness, and our boy is very used to this skill. Ready to put it to the test, he willed the creature to appear before his eyes. But to his great surprise, instead of a large, terrifying giant appearing, what materialized before him was a tiny creature that could barely climb a single step. Kim was obviously very upset. He didn't know if this was a punishment for leaving the other world, or if his demonic energy was just too low. He had no idea how to use this little guy, who seemed completely useless under the sunlight, but the boy started to think about it. Even if the creature is small, it can hide within the shadows. Finally, our boy returned to the battalion after enjoying his vacation days. He was immediately welcomed by his colleagues, who were praising the recruit for getting promoted in record time. While still being cheered on by everyone, our protagonist noticed something interesting. He held out a small package towards his friend. He said it was a bottle of moisturizer, as he knew his friend liked that sort of thing. Since army life is so intense, a gift like this is practically a luxury. Seeing the camaraderie between them, Roberval made some useless comments, saying the protagonist hadn't been gone for long. Even so, he asked if he'd bought the magazine he had requested. Roberval had asked for some indecent magazines, but ended up receiving only a few packets of instant coffee. Our protagonist was caught off guard by some interesting news. The advanced exam would be held soon, and his name was on the list. This surprised some of the other soldiers, since our boy hadn't been in the battalion long enough for this. The commander must have pulled some strings. Other extras were excited about it, wondering if the protagonist would be able to handle the exercise. However, he then shared something with his barracks mates. He had received a special proposal from the commander himself. Our boy calmly explained the conversation they had, and all those extras were quite surprised by what he said. Several ideas popped into their heads, and the obvious conclusion was that the protagonist wanted to take the evaluation to get promoted faster. If he could pull it off, he would be really lucky. Far from happy, Roberval was burning with envy. One of the recruits mentioned that those taking the advanced exam needed to go through special instruction, and that the next day's weapons training would be quite intense. The same extras who shared this information were now leaving the barracks, chatting casually. But our protagonist was surprised. He hadn't known there was special weapons training. And the next day, everyone was listening to the sergeant as he gave instructions for the following day's exam. Those who had already taken this exam should still pay attention to the theoretical part. As the sergeant continued to speak, the protagonist grew more and more excited. The theoretical exams for the Hunter Corps are easy. The real difficulty is in the practical part. Our boy was sure he would pass, but he was thinking of going far beyond that. He wanted a perfect score, and all the perks that came with it, realizing he should take that exam much more seriously. Finally, the day arrived. The platoon stood before the sergeant, ready for instructions. The sergeant told his men to grab their melee weapons, but the recruits were to take only swords, while the corporals could choose whatever they wanted. The sergeant would teach the rookies the basics of the local swordsmanship technique. However, blindly following tradition would get them nowhere. That technique is just the foundation of what they will learn. It needs to be adapted to each person's style. After this brief explanation, everyone was buzzing with energy. The sergeant kept yelling nonstop, telling his recruits to focus and pay attention. Right after that, he moved through the air as if he were a dancer. Kim really liked those spins, and now he understood why why this was special weapons training, because it's foolish to think you can only fight monsters with firearms. Some recruits were having trouble imitating the movements, but our protagonist used to dance foro in the other world, and he had a very fluid rhythm. While still practicing, he realized the techniques from the other world might be better than the current ones, and as he put this into practice, his colleagues were amazed. The protagonist truly has plot armor behind every one of his strikes. At that moment, the sergeant ordered all the useless grunts to stop moving, and for the protagonist to come to the podium. Kim didn't know why he was being called up there, and as he walked towards the sergeant, he grew more and more anxious. The sergeant realized the platoon was full of useless soldiers, and in an attempt to improve them, he told them to pay close attention to the protagonist. For every move our boy made, the sergeant offered very pertinent commentary, while all the other recruits watched intently. From demonstrating so many moves, Kim became quite exhausted, and he wasn't even the one in charge of the instruction. While still resting, he was surprised by the sergeant's arrival. He had come over just to congratulate him, handing our boy something to eat when he was alone. Receiving that pack of candy, Kim began to wonder if the sergeant always carried something like that in his pocket. And it didn't take long for him to be surprised again. Another recruit came to praise our protagonist, and knowing he was exceptional, asked if he could teach him a little. Kim quickly hid the candy, but he was surprised by the request. And this recruit said he liked using a sword, but he couldn't adapt his technique to fight monsters. Realizing the request was sincere, Kim said he would help him as many times as needed. Savoring his candy, Kim carefully observed the warrior's movements. That really was the basic technique of the Hunter Battalion. But what Dongjin lacked wasn't technique. It was something much more important than that. He needed to learn how to be confident. Thanks to his experience in the other world, our protagonist had a PhD in this area of education. Soon he started to get very excited, because when the time came, he would turn this weak Dongjin into a machine for annihilating dangerous monsters. Saturday finally arrived, the day of the evaluation. Some recruits were having fun playing sports, while others were playing a bit of that Eastern chess. A notification sounded from administration for all of them. Those taking the special exam must prepare immediately. Our protagonist finally realized it was time for him to earn his well-deserved promotion. He and his platoon were already properly assembled. Before them stood Lieutenant Cheolman, and he would be their instructor for the day. With his harsh way of speaking, he said he expected everyone to obey his orders and began asking them to introduce themselves. Gradually, the battalion moved towards the bus that would take them to the exam location. This test would be held in another division's territory, which is why they needed to travel. During the trip, they could review some concepts to prepare for the practical exam. Some were very nervous, while others wished they were sleeping. Kim soon started paying attention to the rumors. It seems the 4th Battalion would also be participating in the exam. This was a good sign for everyone because there were women in that unit. One of the recruits was ready to show off all his skills in front of the girls, as if it were some kind of mating dance. This poor soul just didn't know that the protagonist was going to do the same thing, but much better than him, because he was already determined to receive something even more important. After a short trip, the protagonist's platoon finally arrived in the 105th Division's territory. They all went to a briefing room to hear the theoretical explanation. The lieutenant was handing out some results and only one guy had failed. It was that poor fellow who wanted to show off for the girls. The rest of the soldiers could proceed to the practical exam. It's sad. Nothing left for the beta. No one could understand how that guy failed the theoretical part, since it was literally designed to weed out illiterates. Kim, on the other hand, still had his eyes on the prize, but a woman in the hallway noticed his presence. It was that mysterious girl who knows he's very strong, because she saw our boy's demonstration at the beginning of this story. All the officers were gathered for the exam. The one in charge was Colonel Mustache, and he was giving his presentation. They didn't just want to find people worthy of promotion, they wanted to have a lot of fun. Our protagonist was already getting annoyed. Instead of having to listen to these extras, he wanted to be demonstrating his abilities. The colonel said that in this exam there were 2 special participants, our protagonist and that blue-haired girl. Kim was quite surprised to find another prodigy like him in that place. The presence of both of them seemed to cause quite a stir. One of the fighters knows that special conditions apply to those with good scores who want to go to the front lines. Some prodigies from his battalion got good offers last year but turned them down. In other words, the people from Division 104 are basically a bunch of lunatics. Everyone is looking for Kim, trying to figure out who he is. Finally, our boy was identified by his rank. Those 2 black stripes mean he's a second-class recruit. The blue-haired girl ended up making eye contact with our protagonist, which immediately embarrassed her, as she didn't want to get caught in that situation. Now, Colonel Mustache finished his nonsense, telling everyone they should do their best. For God's sake, this is like church. Every few minutes a new guy grabs the mic to waste our time. This time it's Captain Cheeks. At least he said the test is starting now. The first part is to measure strength. It's a very simple test. They just need to push the examiner in front of them, who is affectionately called the Mountain Soldier. But the protagonist remembered he was once asked to push that large, heavy oar. Apparently, these guys like being pushed. This is going to be ridiculous. Captain Cheek said the recruits have 1 minute. They will be graded on a scale of 0 to 100. The maximum score is for anyone who can push the Mountain Soldier back 10 meters. The recruits will be called by their names. The first extra was called. He's a guy with wide open eyes. He definitely likes to snort a little party powder, if you know what I mean. In no time, he placed his hands on the Mountain Soldier's muscular body, full of malicious intent. The party powder enthusiast started pushing with all his might. If he keeps this up, his hemorrhoids might pay the price. But the Mountain Soldier didn't like the close contact, increasing his physical energy just a bit and throwing the poor guy far away. The examiner immediately failed this extra. Those who don't achieve the minimum score of 40 points are already out of the competition. The other recruits started to get very scared. Several tried to push the Mountain Soldier. Some managed to make him step back, but none passed. This is starting to make the examiner quite upset. He expected more from these useless recruits. Finally, the blue-haired girl was called to take the test. Surprising all the extras, she managed to push the little Mountain Soldier back a total of 5 meters, and she seemed to do it with great ease. All the poor souls are in awe not only of her strength, but also of her beautiful face, as she is the daughter of the division commander. Now they understand why she's so powerful. Strength must run in the family. Ignoring these comments, the blue-haired girl knows there's someone there with the power of a protagonist. Finally, our boy was called to give his demonstration. He calmly walks towards the Mountain Soldier, but this time he won't do what he did against the rock. His goal is to push him more than 10 meters to get an extra score. Our boy moves towards the target full of enthusiasm. Barely touching his hands to the Mountain Soldier, he sent the brute flying. This left all the extras completely stunned. It all happened too fast. The Mountain Soldier managed to recover, putting a hand on the ground. When his body stopped moving, he realized he had passed the 10-meter mark. While the examiner was happy, the Mountain Soldier took it personally. In front of everyone, our protagonist showed who the alpha wolf of the pack is, impressing the blue-haired girl. The truth is, our protagonist was disappointed. He didn't get an extra score for doing that. The test continues, and more recruits are failing. They're learning the hard way that pushing the Mountain Soldier is not an easy task. Finally, the strength portion was over. It's time to test the agility of these fighters. But for those who were eliminated, they need to take the exit. This is no place for the weak. Meanwhile, soldiers are setting up the equipment for the next challenge. They also brought out a machine designed to shoot small balls. This is only making the soldiers more apprehensive. They can't believe they'll have to dodge bullets. But with a smile on his face, the captain told them not to be afraid. These are rubber bullets. They hurt a little, but the goal of the test is to not get hit. Our protagonist found this quite interesting, as the machine presented to them is state-of-the-art. The perfect score is to survive for 1 minute in front of that machine. The candidate must stay within the designated area. Even though it's meant to measure agility, those confident in their own strength can also stand there and take hits for a minute. That's an option. Anyone who leaves the designated area lasts less than 30 seconds, or gets seriously injured will fail. It was time to put the test into practice. Just then, someone called the protagonist's name. Looking back, he was extremely surprised by this person's presence. This is our boy's friend, Dong Jin, who managed to pass the strength test. Since he's taken this test before, the attribute test won't fail him. The problem is that the overall evaluation has become even stricter. He told our protagonist that the rubber bullets are very fast. He can't rely solely on his vision. Every little detail or intuition must be followed. The first recruit already took a shot to the face. The poor guy just got hurt. Because of that, he was eliminated from the test and taken directly to the infirmary. Kim realized that a large portion of the candidates are failing the first part, which is why the pass rate is so low. But making it difficult makes a lot of sense. Not everyone is meant to be on the front lines with the creatures. Recruits are being eliminated left and right. The captain says they're made of paper, that it doesn't even seem like they want to be promoted. While the recruits are being humiliated, the captain called for the next one. It's time for the blue-haired girl to show her full potential. As the rubber ball approaches, the extras are impressed. She managed to dodge it with great ease. The balls are traveling at the speed of light, yet they're unable to hit her body, surprising everyone with her great physical skills. As soon as she finished the test, the captain told the extras that they should perform that way too. That girl was the first to get a perfect score, and she returns to her spot full of confidence. However, she looks deeply into the protagonist's eyes, waiting to see what he'll be capable of. The extras noticed the sudden stare, and since they never made it past the 5th grade, they figured the two were having some kind of affair. But our protagonist has no idea what that woman wants. It's time for the protagonist to show all his power. After being called, he's being watched intently by the blue-haired woman. The stare is so fixed that our boy started to feel feel quite uncomfortable. He doesn't know if this girl is hoping for a compliment for getting a perfect score. The rubber bullet machine was ready to let loose. It fired the first shot, but failed to hit the protagonist. The blue-haired girl was very surprised by this. Our boy, on the other hand, took it personally. He's going to demonstrate the vast difference in tenacity between them. The other recruits can't believe what they're seeing. The protagonist is dodging while walking forward, getting even closer to the firing machine. He's dodging all the bullets as if they're moving in slow motion. While doing this, he still manages to smile at the blue-haired girl, mocking her. After humiliating the recruits, the captain was left speechless. He was so surprised that our protagonist's test went 10 seconds over the limit, so he told them to stop firing, as the young man had achieved a perfect score. The entire gym was filled with a great silence, but after that incredible display of agility, it felt weird to even continue the test. Those who managed to survive this far were taken outside, where they stood before an open portal. The captain still can't get over the protagonist's performance, so he's a bit flustered. He announced they will now begin the endurance test. Although it's the last one, it's the simplest. They just need to survive in the dungeon. After a 40-minute walk, they are all finally inside. They need to get to the other side, receive a stamp from the examiner, and return. But they were not told the distance. This leaves everyone quite confused. Kim noticed the other candidates were being very cautious, so they must be paying close attention. Our boy was thinking about running a little faster. Before he could put that into practice, the blue-haired girl bumped into him on purpose. She even glanced back with great indifference. Determined to prove something to our protagonist, the blue-haired girl started running like her life depended on it. What she didn't know was that this simple gesture had provoked the protagonist, who felt deeply challenged. Determined to remain the best, Kim started running much faster, leaving all the other extras in the dust. Since she had started earlier, the blue-haired girl gained some distance, but it didn't last long. Our protagonist was already right beside her. He told the girl there wasn't much she could do now. She didn't understand what those words meant, so Kim told her he was just talking to himself. The truth is, he couldn't resist that provocation. Our boy started running so much faster that he completely crushed the blue-haired girl's motivation. She stopped to catch her breath, watching the protagonist pull away into the distance. This made her remember something. The day she arrived for her tour of duty. Her colleagues were very enthusiastic about her. Besides being a general's daughter, she was also incredibly talented. This warm reception made the girl quite shy. Everyone thought she would be despicable and spoiled, but in reality, she wasn't an arrogant person. Knowing her qualities, the other recruits believed the blue-haired girl would have an easy time, since she was so dedicated. But everything changed after she saw our protagonist's strength, making her want to know more about this anonymous citizen. During training, the blue-haired girl began to dedicate herself completely, pushing herself to the limit, leading her team to victory in every competition. Right after that competition, the supervisor gave them a few minutes of rest, and the blue-haired girl's team had to fall into formation right after. They managed to set a new record for that training center, and because of that, they got the rest of the day off. Among those recruits, it was unanimous that they only broke the record thanks to the blue-haired girl's efforts. Hearing all these rumors, she started to become more and more confident about her own abilities. Inside the barracks, the girls were changing clothes peacefully. That's when someone burst in, full of energy. The capture the flag record they had set had just been broken. To make matters worse, the new record was just 1 minute and 2 seconds, something completely impossible. And the one responsible was a citizen named Kim. As soon as she heard that name, the blue-haired girl was surprised, because she was sure she had heard that name somewhere before. Gradually, our protagonist's fame began to spread. He was breaking every training record. Whenever the blue-haired girl was training, her gossipy colleague would update the platoon on everything. The blue-haired girl was getting completely tired of it. Every day she heard something new about the protagonist, but deep in her heart she wanted to be the one they were all talking about. While sleeping, she started to dream of an old memory of her father, who was also in the army. The little girl watched attentively before the man left for work. He said goodbye to her with great affection, leaving the girl behind because Korea needed him. Her goal is to become stronger and stronger, just as her father once was. Eventually, she was recruited, and that colonel had been her father's subordinate. The blue-haired girl thanked him for the consideration and respect shown to her family name. Since she had a perfect score, she could choose any post to serve in. He even suggested the 107th Division, where her father was stationed. But the girl already had a name in mind, our protagonist's, and she wanted to know where that citizen had gone. It was then that she remembered she wasn't there to succumb to childish competitions. Even though she had provoked our protagonist, she did it because she got carried away, and now she understood why he became so competitive. But worst of all, remembering everything that happened that day, she couldn't tell if what she was feeling was envy. Then she realized it would be better to apologize to him, because the blue-haired girl's goal is to get stronger, not famous, and she'll do it without her father's help. If she found someone better than her, she should learn as much as possible from them. She couldn't give in to her own childishness. Finally, she reached the place where she would receive the supervisor's stamp, who had told the protagonist to return immediately because he was making incredible time. Our boy showed the stamp he had received to his competitor. Walking past her, he revealed that he almost fell asleep while waiting for her to arrive. That ended up provoking the blue-haired girl to no end. Full of energy, she demanded to receive her stamp immediately. Apologizing was no longer an option. She needed to defeat him in a humiliating way. A few soldiers managed to cross the portal and get to the other side. All of them were completely exhausted. Only the protagonist seemed calm, and the record for that competition belonged to him. With great pride, the captain announced that Kim had a time of 29 minutes. Behind him came the blue-haired girl with a time of 32 minutes. The captain was very happy with this new recruit, who had a perfect evaluation. It was time for all the recruits to gather for a meal, as they needed to continue with the evaluation. The blue-haired girl bent down to pick up her jacket, and ended up exchanging glances with the protagonist once more. Since they were both being very childish, Kim stuck his tongue out at her. He then went on with his day as if nothing had happened. The blue-haired girl just watched, realizing she had provoked someone even more childish than herself. This made her start to smile. Even though she had started the provocations, she was the one who ended up paying the price. There was nothing more to be done about the situation. Putting her uniform back on, the blue-haired girl decided to get on with her day as well. Finally, the second part of the special exam had arrived. Several creatures were heading towards the recruits. Violent and dangerous goblins were ready to attack. The young man with the sword looked a bit tired, but he was still determined and ready to finish off his enemies. One of those monsters charged furiously at him. The recruit was completely focused on this enemy, and was surprised by another goblin coming from behind. He needed to act quickly to avoid being hit. After blocking the first attack, he landed a kick on his enemy's gallbladder. The other creature was ready to hit him from behind with a thick club. Disaster was narrowly averted, but the recruit managed to use his sword to fulfill his duty, landing a nearly fatal cut on that monster. The tension of the moment made the recruit break out in a sweat. The monster in front of him looked completely insane, as if it had inhaled a lot of party dust. Those monsters were still healthy enough to keep fighting. Our protagonist observed everything with great attention, as if he had advice to give. That second part of the exam was even easier than he had imagined. They just needed to show their superiors they had mastered the sword. To pass this part, they only needed to show they knew the basics. Among the participants, Dongjin was evaluated exceptionally. He wielded a sword better than most people. Even the captain was very proud of that, leaving poor Dongjin quite embarrassed. But now that he was in a practical situation, things were different. He didn't have much experience in real combat. The monsters were advancing once again, ready to deliver pain and despair. In the final part of this exam, the candidates had to defeat real creatures. Dongjin needed to defeat 3 goblins, and he had only managed to finish 1. It seems he managed to defeat another one, but even so, the last goblin looked challenging. Then, in the blink of an eye, the creature's gallbladder was removed. Dongjin was the surgeon for this operation. Since he wasn't a real doctor, his patient ended up losing its life. The captain noticed that the recruit took almost 8 minutes to finish off his enemies. Quite tired, Dongjin understood what he could have done better, and now he was leaving the arena, very disappointed. Our protagonist saw that his friend had many opportunities to end the fight, but he hesitated at the last moment, as if he were very scared, or worse than that, maybe he didn't trust his own abilities enough. Dongjin finally rejoined the other recruits. The protagonist noticed his friend looked very down. Now that it was Kim's turn, he was ready to show everyone something. As he was going to earn his own promotion, it was time for him to get closer and closer to his true dream. The recruits watched very closely what was happening. Even the blue-haired girl can't believe it. Our protagonist is basically Negan now. If his enemies are named Glenn, he has a huge strategic advantage. The captain didn't understand why this young prodigy chose such a stupid weapon. It could hinder the task he now needs to perform, but our boy remains quite confident. He was presented with 3 very large and dangerous goblins. All he has to do with these creatures is deliver a bit of kinetic energy. The monsters charge towards him as if they were starving. The protagonist firmly grips his baseball bat. The first move is executed with lightning speed, like an eagle about to snatch its first prey. That swing is flying at the speed of light. The poor creatures are approaching, unaware of what's about to happen. All of them were hit by a completely devastating shockwave. All our protagonist needed was just 4 seconds, and a single strike filled with hatred. The officers watching the test can't believe the potential of this prodigy, who so far has a perfect score. The blue-haired girl is getting more and more impressed. From inside the arena, Kim looked specifically at his competitor, giving her a very confident smile. It's time for these people to witness the existence of a true god. But for the blue-haired girl, the real question is where this reckless bastard came from. The day is ending, and the officers are congratulating all the soldiers for participating in the test, especially our dear protagonist, who has now achieved his long-awaited promotion, becoming a corporal. It all happened so fast that the captain addressed our boy by his previous rank. He's not used to what happened yet, but he still told the boy to keep pushing forward. In fact, their battalion commander is very pleased with this achievement, especially since he got a perfect score. Our protagonist's entire squad began to celebrate, hoping he'll soon become a sergeant. Our protagonist also hopes to meet all these expectations. As he and his platoon are boarding the bus to return, our boy looked back. There's a recruit there he wanted to keep talking to. It's Dong-jin, who is still very enthusiastic, but the poor guy doesn't know what the future holds for him. Special training sessions with our protagonist. Inside the bus, everyone is very happy and cheerful, as they are seeing something very interesting through the window. The blue-haired girl went over to talk to our protagonist. She looks at him intently. However, she didn't get promoted. Our protagonist immediately noticed the rank on her uniform. Even though the girl was exceptional throughout the entire exam, it wasn't enough. But in the presence of our protagonist, it was obvious she wouldn't achieve something like that. Since the girl was completely silent, Kim boarded the bus and sat by the window. Looking outside, he saw that Weirdo was still there, completely motionless. It seems this blue-haired girl is a bit slow on the uptake. She's trying to choose her words to apologize for being rude. Just as she was about to say something, she saw something with her own eyes. Our protagonist started pressing his own face against the window and told her that if she provoked him again, she would be completely finished. These words left the poor girl quite surprised. Then, the blue-haired girl turned her back on the departing bus, trying to understand why that lunatic behaved that way. Inside the bus, the gossips are already starting their work. They want to know what happened between the protagonist and that beautiful woman, as they couldn't stop looking at each other during the exam. Our boy revealed to them that he had been provoked by the blue-haired girl and ended up giving in to the provocation. That's what happened. But that wasn't the answer the gossips were hoping for. They can't believe that the expression on the blue-haired girl's face was one of someone trying to provoke him. Everyone is very upset with the protagonist, as he seems to have slighted the most beautiful girl in the entire galaxy. Kim told the extras that woman isn't his type. He doesn't like blue hair, which led to him being called arrogant, until someone decided to ask him what his dream woman is. Full of conviction, Kim said that his dream woman is named Lumi, but the extras have no idea who this woman is. Our protagonist revealed that she's the most beautiful character in the game he plays, which only left the extras even more disappointed. It's completely predictable. Even I would be disappointed. At least the rest of the trip proceeded in silence. At night, several pieces of fried chicken were consumed by the recruits, who were celebrating what happened on that great day. The lieutenant did that for them, the first kindness in a long time, a sign that he was truly happy. Everyone is thanking our protagonist for what he did during the exam. If it weren't for him, they wouldn't be eating fried chicken right now. The red-headed extra noticed our boy was promoted and said that he would soon become a sergeant. These words left Kim quite thoughtful, until an authority figure entered the barracks carrying several beers, and he has an order for everyone. The recruits must line up immediately. Some extras are immediately confused, not knowing the reason for such formality. Lee said he had completed the report that was to be delivered to the administration, and thanks to the exemplary performance of one member of that squad in the advanced exam, they received a small treat. The red-headed extra wants to know if that's really beer, and his friend who's always with him seems furious, wanting to taste some of the fermented drink. Lee said that it's a gift from the commander to the protagonist. This drink doesn't belong to the lackeys. The poor souls were very disappointed by this, as they had been teased with the drink from the very beginning. After the big celebration, Kim decided to take a short walk outside. He cleared his throat to say the next words. With no witnesses around, he told the little shadow dwarf to appear. Slowly, the dark energy began to take shape, finally giving rise to the little shadow dwarf. Kim asked how the creature was doing. Because of its weird appearance, he was a bit disappointed at first, but now he has a very good idea for how to use it. Our boy doesn't need an assassin right now, so he has the perfect task for it. It will be responsible for gathering sensitive information in his place. Noticing the little dwarf was distracted chasing flies, Kim told it to pay attention. It is to start following the officers of that place. If there's any information about unusual occurrences, it must contact the protagonist, especially if it involves demonic energy. In response, the little shadow dwarf held out its hand, expecting to receive something. Our boy just asked the creature to wait a little longer, passing some demonic energy to it. Now that the little dwarf is refreshed, Kim told it to be very cautious, as it cannot be caught by anyone. But seeing the happiness of that dark creature makes our boy very anxious, wondering if it will really be able to fulfill its mission. Until the protagonist was surprised by a mysterious voice, asking what he was doing outside. Our boy hesitated a bit before looking back, and said it had been a long time since he last had a beer, so he needed to come outside for some fresh air. Lee asked if the protagonist's tolerance for alcohol was low, and Kim told him it wasn't, thinking that, in reality, his kind doesn't usually get drunk. They can drink poison or the strongest liquor. Nothing has an effect on them. Lee took the opportunity to congratulate the protagonist on his promotion, but he said he shouldn't get too relaxed. He needs to maintain the same standard of excellence. Kim said he would do so with pleasure. Saying goodbye to our boy, Lee simply reminded him not to stay outside too long, or the other recruits might end up drinking all his beer. But the truth is that the protagonist is very relieved, since no one found the little shadow dwarf. Besides, the more he gets to know Lee, the more our boy realizes that he is a very exemplary soldier. But that's not the kind of personality he wants for himself. The next day, some officers are talking, saying that this guy seems to have been born for this. The commander thought the platoon was made up of nothing but wretches, but among them, there is a diamond in the rough. Corporal Kim set new records in that competition, finishing off the creatures in just 4 seconds. Now the commander understood why the training center's director kept praising the protagonist. He had surpassed all expectations. Not to mention, he was also the one who wiped out the creatures at the oil reserve. The report stated that the protagonist was the first to act to protect the property. Since his transfer, it only took him a month to achieve the rank of corporal. His trajectory is truly impressive, and he might surprise everyone even more. It's only a matter of time before the entire Hunter Corporation hears about him, and certain people will start keeping an eye on our boy. Surprised by this statement, the captain asked if the commander was talking about the Special Forces Brigade. But the commander is certain it will happen, as the protagonist has great potential for it. He has seen many hunters in his life, and only a few are capable of earning the title of legend. Colonel Mustache is one of them. Right at this moment, a soldier stands in the middle of the desert. Facing him are several threatening creatures, lizardmen of the worst kind. In that place, there are also giant stone monsters. All sorts of creatures are surrounding the soldier, whose only weapon is a baseball bat. The creatures begin to roar furiously, but our protagonist remains completely unfazed. It's time for him to put that baseball bat to work. The next day, some recruits were in desperate need of hydration. Many of them seemed completely hungover. Our protagonist, at least, was going about his day normally. He just took his first shower and saw that some of his colleagues looked very sick, until one of them decided to ask him, "What's the secret to waking up without a hangover?" Our boy said there isn't one. He just wakes up feeling fine. After saying this, Kim noticed someone else had also entered the room. Lee had just finished working out, and just like our protagonist, he was perfectly fine, even better after breaking a sweat. Kim realized that this guy was truly a model soldier. It's surprising that he had already exercised. Lee asked if our guy had been to the base's gym yet, but the protagonist revealed he hadn't had the chance. Lee told him he could use the facility however he wanted because he's a corporal now. Before leaving, Lee mentioned that the squad's virtual reality equipment is pretty decent, and the protagonist should try it out. This information seemed to trigger something in the protagonist's mind. The time had come for him to finally access the most coveted room. Our protagonist went to the academy, as recommended. He seemed to have high expectations. Entering the room, he was quite impressed. Everything in there was truly impressive. Fiddling with some buttons, Kim wondered if he was doing it right. On that computer, he could choose which enemy to face. Kim decided he would beat up some orcs. Now he needed to choose the number of enemies. Our protagonist was overflowing with confidence. He wanted the system to spawn the maximum number of enemies possible. According to the computer, the maximum number of simulated creatures was 30. The protagonist's real motivation for doing this was to see if the experience would be just like a game. Realizing he even had to choose his own weapon, Kim became even more enthusiastic. All the parameters had been set. Now he needed to use the equipment. The battle was about to be simulated in virtual reality. Kim stood in the middle of a desert, holding his weapon. Our boy started looking around, quite impressed, watching as his enemies were rendered one by one. When it was all done, the creatures advanced toward him, completely curious. Kim realized this simulator was actually very well made. Our boy began to beat his enemies with pure joy in his heart. The feeling of impact on the bat was perfect. He had never had so much fun in his entire life. The virtual creatures seemed completely furious, but all this only added to the realism of the experience. Our protagonist wanted to eradicate his enemies cruelly, leaving only bodies behind. That first beating session was very quick. Kim finished off all the enemies, but with only 30 enemies, the battle was over faster than he expected. Then he realized he could try other things. He discovered he could choose 30 creatures of each type. They began to materialize inside the virtual reality setting. Now, our soldier was ready to deliver a world of pain. The simulation had truly become a real hunt. Several dangerous creatures were approaching our protagonist. He couldn't believe he would get to beat them all at once. The lizard men were the first to join the fun and games, followed by all the other monsters. Our protagonist was ready to introduce each of them to the nails at the tip of his bat, because the real monster in that place was the protagonist. Kim smashed the first creature's head with all the violence he had been holding back. He continued to tear through them, swift and lethal, breaking bones and knocking out teeth, destroying limbs and taking lives. No simulated creature was capable of resisting him. Blows rained down on the enemies. Never in human history had a baseball bat been used so effectively. Kim was displaying the full range of his techniques. Completely surrounded by the bodies of his enemies, he concluded the simulation. Kim seemed very pleased with this last session, ending the virtual reality training. Looking closely at the equipment he had used, Kim couldn't deny that he had really enjoyed it. After his favorite game, that simulated battle was the best thing he had ever done. At that moment, a mysterious system message appeared. Baseball bat skill. His proficiency with that weapon had just increased, which wasn't a bad thing for our protagonist. He never imagined he could improve his skills with that kind of simulation. This way, he didn't need to go into dungeons to refine his skills. Since he was already satisfied with that session, Kim decided he would return another time to perfect his technique with other weapons. It was then that he ran into someone. Dongmin was standing right outside, and our boy asked him what he was doing. The poor guy could barely speak, and he started pointing at the virtual reality room. Kim was trying to understand what had happened to his friend, but the simulation's result was recorded. He had fought a total of 120 creatures at once. Kim realized that this might cause quite a stir, and now our boy didn't know what to do. Dongmin asked if the protagonist was really the one who defeated all those enemies. While trying to choose the right words, Kim was struck by a brilliant idea. With determination in his eyes, Kim said it was time for him and Dongmin to have a very serious talk, but the poor guy couldn't understand the meaning of his words. Kim told his friend to get into the gym now, because it was time for them to start training for real. Dongmin tried to get out of it, saying he was hungover, but our protagonist completely ignored him, saying he'd feel better after sweating a bit. The gym door was finally locked. Outside, someone happened to see our protagonist's record. An impressive number of creatures had been annihilated, leaving the envious Roberval frozen in fear, as he now realized he was truly useless. Time passed quickly, and it began to snow. Roberval went inside the barracks and saw his comrades laughing about something. He decided to approach the happy group. He then asked an extra where everyone was and what had happened to the protagonist. He was told the platoon went to get equipment to clear the snow. As for the protagonist, he was in the gym training and would stay there until their daily routine began. However, this poor extra made a mistake. He called the protagonist Corporal in front of Roberval. This was very bad, as he knew Roberval was an envious person. But ignoring what happened, Roberval left a message with the extra. He said the protagonist should meet with the commander, who was already looking for him. The extra immediately went to carry out the order, afraid that Roberval might turn into a jerk and change his mind. Going over to the other recruits, Roberval asked what they were doing. Among the men was a piece of paper with some notes. They asked if Roberval wanted to join in. They were making a bet on how quickly the protagonist would be promoted to sergeant, and the prize was a full month's salary. Looking at the notes, Roberval asked why they were bothering with bets. One of the recruits started making fun of his companion, who bet that the promotion would happen in just 6 months, something impossible. But defending his own argument, the long-haired guy said the protagonist is simply incredible. All of this was said while Roberval was still reading the notes. The two extras are taunting each other more and more since neither wants to lose a whole month's salary on that bet. Only then did they realize that Roberval had gotten in on it too. But his bet left the long-haired recruit even more surprised. He can't believe Roberval bet on that, making it clear he won't be able to back out of this absurd wager. But Roberval completely ignores any kind of warning. The long-haired recruit realized that Roberval is even crazier than all of them. It's then revealed that Roberval bet the protagonist's promotion would happen in just 1 month. Inside the academy, there's also weightlifting equipment, and the ones made with the red ore can only be used with supervision. But our protagonist lifts those weights as if they were made of paper. After placing the bar on his back, the rest is history. The protagonist can curl a lot of of weight. Finishing his workout, he casually drops the weights on the floor. Even after exercising for many days, that weight training hasn't increased any of his stats. In the other world, life was much easier in this regard. Our boy likes skills that improve with his stats. He really wishes he had the strength of a returned hero. Starting from scratch is so boring. It was then that a glow appeared before his eyes. Through his status window, he discovered his strength had increased by 5 points, and it was now E rank. Even though it's not much, our protagonist doesn't mind, as he can improve this value with hard work. That extra who received Rubberval's order finally found our boy. He said the commander was looking for him. Kim said he would meet the old man soon, but his eyes were shining with the happiness of someone who had just gained a skill. The poor extra couldn't even understand what had happened. He just watches in confusion. It seems like everyone in this place is very strange. Kim reported to the colonel's office, as he heard he had been summoned. An officer working there received our boy. Approaching him, he said it was nothing special, but they needed to have this conversation soon. He congratulated the protagonist on his first week as a corporal. That officer had also been promoted, and our boy gave him his sincere congratulations. This all happened because of the bat problem, which was solved by our protagonist. That's why the officer is very grateful to him. Handing an envelope to our young man, the officer said this was the reason he was called to his office. It's a gift from the commander for taking care of the bats and for his perfect score on the promotion exam. Despite its simplicity, it's an award recognizing the boy's excellence. All of this will go on his record. Our boy paid close attention to this part. Full of interest, he wants to know if that letter can grant him exceptions, and the officer said it most likely could, but that particular award isn't so easy to get. Few hunters have been awarded like our protagonist, and even fewer have received more than one such award. Kim asked what would happen if he received 10 of those awards, if he would be promoted. The officer began to wonder if our protagonist saw these awards as if they were delivery orders. A few days later, the platoon is gathered before a gate, all equipped with their special weapons. They will be responsible for clearing that dungeon. If they act according to their training, the captain has no doubt they will complete this mission without casualties. They have all been briefed about the dungeon, and a box was placed before them. Seeing that, the soldiers looked a little down. They are going to enter the Ratman's Nest, the sewers. Inside that place, there are a lot of disgusting things. That's why the soldiers need to enter the dungeon wearing masks. The protagonist's battalion continues to advance with great seriousness. The dungeon known as the sewer is a very dangerous category. It's possible to find more than 200 enemies in this place. The soldier leading the advance signaled for everyone to stop and called for the commander. Since the dungeon is very tight, firearms aren't effective. Its environment is very complicated. They need to keep advancing with great caution. One of the soldiers suggested luring the enemies to their position. Now they need to prepare a bait to trick the creatures. Since the smell of that place is extremely repulsive and dangerous, everyone must wear a mask. One of the soldiers is carrying a closed case to the commander, but the feeling of discomfort among them is immense. It's hard for the hunters to use their full potential. Inside that case is the bait that the soldiers will use, a completely rotten banana. Knowing that the Ratmen only eat garbage, the recruits now understand why that place is so disgusting. Slowly, they are preparing the area so that the enemies are drawn to the trap, until one of the soldiers noticed something different. He started walking towards a large pool of waste, which had many bones inside. When he reached that spot, he felt a deep fear, because he saw that the number of bones was even greater than he had expected. In that place were the bones of what seemed to be rat men. The soldier began to better analyze what he had found. Before he could report this, another soldier warned everyone that the creatures were approaching from the main entrance. Everyone must now prepare for battle and form a front line at the entrance. In a short time, the soldiers are already in their positions. The platoon leader told the recruits to stay a bit further back, in a safer spot. Those recruits who like to bet are trying to motivate themselves. Whoever kills fewer rats will have to buy lunch for their buddy. The squad commander told them to stay focused, but so far, the soldiers' morale is quite high. Finally, several rats appeared in that place, furious creatures full of leptospiros. The commander told them to hold their position. They couldn't get scared now, but amidst all those soldiers is our protagonist, happier than a kid in a candy store. The creatures are starting to be exterminated. Those soldiers are really good at what they do, which puts our protagonist quite at ease, since he won't have to worry about any of their safety. No matter what the rats try to do, they are being sliced up as if they were made of butter. 3 rats are trying to attack our protagonist at the same time, who is currently very distracted by his colleague's performance. However, his baseball bat isn't distracted, and it continues to work very well, crushing the creatures in a single move. Among those soldiers, there were 2 with a lot of potential. The sergeant and the lieutenant are finishing off the creatures that get past the defense line. Our boy realized that if those guys can do this so easily, and they aren't recruits, he'll also be promoted soon. Even so, the protagonist pays attention to the techniques being executed. Dongjin is showing great skill with the sword, finishing off every rat that comes his way. This makes the protagonist very happy, seeing that his friend is showing the results of their secret training. While our boy celebrates internally, a battalion leader called for help. He needs more soldiers at his position. Roberval is also watching everything with great attention. While the soldiers are fighting, one of them got startled by something. A large number of rats are approaching again, and they are coming from behind the battalion. Squad 2 and Squad 4 need to take action. The leader told the recruits to keep protecting themselves with the shields. The carnage continues. The rats continue to lose their lives. The red-haired extra realized that the battle was almost over, but he might be wrong. Our protagonist could feel the presence of demonic energy in that place. Realizing he caught the scent late because of the gas mask he was wearing, now he started to get very worried. In the midst of the soldiers, something is trying to break out of the ground. The ground started to crack for no reason. Desperate, the protagonist tries to tell everyone that the enemy is coming from the ground. Surprising the entire battalion, a rock explosion occurred in that spot, leaving several soldiers completely speechless, because the creature they need to defeat now is an irregular monster. A rat on steroids. The creature is huge, and its teeth are sharper than knives. Earlier, someone had found several bones in that place. Surely that giant creature had been feeding on the other rats. That's why it managed to grow to such an absurd size. A soldier fell to the ground, disoriented, and now he's about to be finished off by this mutant rat. The creature advances on him menacingly. The soldier still has his sword, but he's so paralyzed with fear that he doesn't know what to do against that enemy. His superior is approaching quickly, trying to snap the soldier out of his fear, telling him to get his ass in gear, but the poor guy couldn't do anything. The rat is already prepared to tear off pieces of his body. The poor man put his hands in front of his head to shield himself from the attack. At the last second, someone managed to use their sword, but that didn't stop the rat's strike from landing. It was the soldier's superior who managed to save him. They need to get out of there immediately. Lee had done everything possible to extend the man's life, but now that he's without his sword, there's not much he can do to fight the enemy. Finally, our protagonist decided to show up, and this time, he's brought a shield. The hellish rat seems to ignore the protagonist's power, focusing only on its victims. What it doesn't know is that the protagonist enjoys absorbing demonic energy. He immediately noticed something in its eyes and in the creature's behavior. It seemed to feel no fear. Smashing the rat's head with the shield, Kim realized it was completely consumed by demonic energy. Thanks to this action, the other soldiers bought themselves a few moments of safety. Our protagonist just signals with his hands that everything is okay, telling Dongjin that he had done an excellent job. Now that the poor guy is safe, he even manages a smile for our protagonist. As the situation had become much more dangerous, the recruits were ordered to fall back, and the sergeant called on those who enjoy violence to join in on the fun. All this while, the rat managed to recover. It launches several attacks in the protagonist's direction. The creature's immense power completely cracked the floor of the place. This shook the cave's structure, causing large chunks of rock to start falling from the ceiling. This situation put the soldiers in danger, but for our protagonist it turned out to be very useful. He's just waiting for the rat's claws to reach him. Thanks to the dust kicked up by the rocks, he's sure no one will witness his abilities. Using his great speed and power, our protagonist struck the rat in an extremely fragile part of its anatomy. At the same time, he advances even more fiercely against the creature, hitting his enemy with a completely devastating shield bash. The rat is still quite disoriented, but its beatdown session wasn't over. Kim began to land many blows on it, a number so large it was somewhere between a lot and all of them. Finally, the protagonist decided to stop hitting it, seeing that the rat was already completely crushed by his hands. Now our boy can do what he's been wanting to do, absorb all the demonic energy within the creature's body. As the rat is drained of this mysterious energy, its body begins to wither. The system announced that the absorbed demonic energy had increased the protagonist's status by 1 point. Even though the amount isn't huge, it's better than nothing. Kim assured himself he would use it for a good cause. Outside the portal, a few armed soldiers are standing guard. Finally, the mission was over, and the soldiers were now taking a moment's rest. Those who like to bet are still happy. The long-haired soldier unfortunately lost his bet. One of the superiors is contacting the high command, reporting that they encountered an irregular monster and had to exit the dungeon. Answering his superiors, he said they only found one creature of that type, and it was defeated by a member of their squad, our protagonist, who is now disgusted with his own clothes. Knowing he needs a shower immediately, the squad leader ended up calling for reinforcements. A soldier approached our protagonist and said that the front lines are a very complicated place. That's why he came to thank him for the help they received. The long-haired soldier said that when he saw that rat, He was so scared his body wouldn't move. Kim said that's normal, but that he had just jumped into the situation without thinking about the consequences. However, the long-haired soldier said that emergencies create situations like that, and because he reacted quickly, Dongjin and the sergeant are still alive. Knowing the situation was really complicated, the long-haired soldier asked if the protagonist was okay, and he answered with a simple smile, until one of the superiors went up to our boy. The man wanted to know if he had been injured. Kim told him with full confidence that he was in perfect health. Sighing in relief, yet very concerned, the captain realized he would need to talk with the protagonist when they returned. Our boy doesn't know what caused this, but he agreed to the order. The long-haired soldier noticed that the platoon commander didn't seem very happy. The sergeant also seemed to be in the middle of a very important call. He went to the squad commander to report that the injured only had minor wounds, and that Dongjin was also in perfect health. Even though they faced great danger, everyone is alive. Finally, the commander could breathe a sigh of relief. Now it was time for the sergeant to start giving orders to this whole crew, saying that despite unforeseen circumstances, they still needed to clear the dungeon. Everyone should start inspecting their equipment and prepare to return. Back at the battalion, the captain is talking with the protagonist. He said he must describe in detail how he managed to defeat that creature, as it's part of the report. Now our protagonist doesn't know what he should say. He tried to defeat it with the shield, but when that wasn't enough, he had to punch it with his hands. But it's very likely that people wouldn't believe that. The captain, observing our boy, said he couldn't see clearly because his view was obstructed. Even so, he asked if our protagonist really defeated the creature with his bare hands. Small pieces of evidence were on his knuckles, marked by those powerful punches. Kim said the rat was full of energy, and he didn't have much time to think of a way to defeat it. Growing more and more curious, the captain asked our combatant what his current stats were. Kim said his strength is at 65, and his agility is at 60. This left the captain speechless. He himself is just over 40 points, yet this soldier had already surpassed 60. That's basically double the average for a sergeant. With stats like those, the captain said the protagonist could be in the Hunter's military academy. But knowing the boy's file, he knows he dropped out of school, which is why he didn't start his career as an officer. Willing to help our protagonist, he said that if he wanted to become an officer, he should take some tests to get into a university. All of this could be made easier after he becomes a sergeant, even suggesting he could handle the paperwork for him. But our protagonist said he's an enemy of formal knowledge and doesn't like studying. His sincerity left the captain pleasantly surprised. Since this decision was genuine, the captain won't try to convince him otherwise. However, he made it clear he would always be willing to help if he changed his mind. He told our boy to rest after finishing the report, because he wouldn't forget what had been done that day. As Kim leaves the office, the captain carefully observes his head cover. On it is the marking of his rank. Before our protagonist left, the captain asked him to wait a moment. He said that the boy had saved his comrades that day. If it weren't for him, the situation could have been a disaster. So, he thanked our protagonist, very sincerely. Kim said he only did what was necessary. The captain looks at him with even more admiration. Walking down the hall, our boy knows he told the truth. He needed to do that to get the demonic energy, getting closer and closer to his true objective. However, something inconvenient just happened. A certain person wants to join our boy's training, and he can't believe this guy wants to become his student in the special training session. And to everyone's surprise, the one who wants to do this is Roberval, simply the biggest jerk in the battalion. Kim asked how Roberval found out they were training in secret. More than that, he wants to know why Roberval wants to train with them, since he hasn't even recovered from his injuries. The truth is, Roberval remembers exactly what happened inside that dungeon. He said Dongjin used to be a piece of crap, and now he's fighting very decently. This must have been because of the training. That's why he wants to join this group too, to get stronger. Our protagonist seems to have been personally offended by that statement, and decided to ask if Roberval really thinks he'd be accepted so easily. Besides, there's a proper way to ask for things around here. It didn't take long for Roberval to understand what the protagonist was asking for. Bowing humbly, he thanked him for being saved, and apologized to Dongjin, mainly for being an asshole this whole time, and admitting he doesn't deserve forgiveness. He said he was sincere about wanting to train even harder. Dongjin is very soft-hearted and asked the protagonist if it was okay for Roberval to join them, but the boy realized the protagonist was taking this very seriously. Kim had a few things to consider. He told recruit Dongjin that this wasn't right. Roberval felt his hopes fading. All of this was caused by his past actions, but he was grateful for the attention he had received. He left the place completely defeated. Before he could actually leave, Kim said he had one condition: pigeon. That was the word. Roberval didn't understand a thing. Kim said that Roberval needed to act like a pigeon for the next 24 hours, and maybe, just maybe, Kim would change his mind. Roberval was immediately furious, and our protagonist thought he had lost interest. Even though his hatred was boiling over, Roberval answered with simple words, cuckoo, just like a pigeon. Dongjin couldn't believe this was actually happening, while the protagonist was having a great time. It was time to witness the creation of the Pigeon Man. The full moon illuminates a large castle. A cart carrying a large object is being transported by the protagonist's former trainer. It is all being brought before a woman. She praised the masked man for his work. He said nothing in response to her words. The woman gives him a cold look, asking if he has anything to say to her. Showing some curiosity, the trainer asked how long she intended to keep doing this, and the saintess said she didn't have an answer to that question. The woman approached the mysterious object. Pushing aside the cloth that covered it, she began to observe. Hidden there was a creature of darkness, and the saintess didn't seem impressed by it. Once again, the trainer called out to her. Now the saintess pointed her hand at the magic circle in the room, summoning all her power. What they are doing is a gift for the man who abandoned them all. The trainer was quite surprised by this. With a very threatening look, the saintess said that this was no exaggeration. Back on Earth, the soldiers are working outside, currently building a camp, something they hate to do. One of the soldiers began to wonder what the point of it was. After all, what they really need to do is fight monsters. To none of them did this kind of work seem meaningful. It was then that they noticed the arrival of a large truck. What had just arrived in the shipment was steedle, which appeared to be large blocks of ore, something that made the soldiers incredibly sad. Nevertheless, the truck's cargo began to be unloaded and piled up outside. Roberval is very committed to the work. They call it steedle among the soldiers because they don't know if it's made of stone or metal. What they do know is that it's an extremely hard material, and much heavier than it looks. That's why they use this material to build their camps. It's found in some dungeons. But our boy heard someone's voice, which was quite strange. Roberval immediately realized he had screwed up. He went silent again, because pigeons can't talk. The work of unloading the truck continues. While conventional soldiers struggle to carry a single block, our protagonist carries 4 without breaking a sweat. With the truck unloaded, the sergeant gave his men a 10-minute break. Now he's going to the captain to discuss a few things. He said that when he went to get those materials, he heard some rumors from headquarters. A dungeon called the Tin Can had appeared in the 104th Battalion's area. All the soldiers who heard the rumor became very worried. Distraught, they went to the sergeant to ask if it was true, hoping he was just joking with them. If they have to do this, it will be the 3rd time. Grabbing the sergeant's legs, they say it's really boring. Our protagonist doesn't seem to understand what it is. While he rests, Roberval watches him intently, as if he wants to explain to the boy what tin can dungeons are. And among dungeons, the tin cans are something peculiar. Hunters give this name to dungeons that meet certain criteria. The first is that they're larger than normal. The second is that their monsters are stronger than average. Lastly, they don't have bosses or very dangerous creatures inside. They are the perfect place for soldiers to get real battle experience and are used for training very frequently. Roberval said they are used as a training ground for hunters, and our protagonist asked why this pigeon won't stop talking. Roberval shut his mouth again, thinking he only did it because he thought someone was curious. And in fact, Kim seems to be interested in this training ground. It doesn't seem like the kind of training he needs right now, and seeing the recruit's sadness, he thought this type of dungeon must be really bad. The captain told them that this is training, an excellent opportunity for them to get even stronger and achieve other accomplishments. This last part caught the protagonist's attention, because if there's one thing he wants in his career, it's accomplishments. Since he's also on the front lines, opportunities have become abundant. Just then, he noticed that the shadow droplet was hidden in his shadow. Kim asked what the creature was doing there. Since there were many people around, he hid the shadow droplet with his boot, paying close attention to the recruits who were still making a scene. Our protagonist is relieved that no one found him out. Placing his hand over the shadow droplet, he asked what had happened. He then gained access to the information it had collected. It seems another irregular monster had appeared. A request for reinforcements was filed by the team investigating the dungeon that appeared in Yanggu. They know that area is a military zone. There are no civilians in that region. 2 members of the investigation team lost consciousness for no apparent reason, a sign that this dungeon needs to be cleared immediately. The army officials said the region should be evacuated. The priority is to clear the dungeon that appeared in a civilian area, so everyone should be sent there. Now our protagonist knows what the shadow droplet had found. Looking at the creature, full of joy, he hit it again with the sole of his boot. While squishing the shadow droplet, our protagonist renewed his own motivation. It's time for him to take another day off. With that in mind, our protagonist began to prepare, already changing out of his army uniform. At the moment, he is making sure he has organized all his things. In that spot, you can see a family portrait with 4 people. The captain asked what motivated the protagonist to carry so many blocks of steedle. It seemed he was really determined to get a day off. Our boy appreciated the comment, as he was told he was a special case. However, his home address is in an isolation zone. The captain asked where our boy stayed the last time he had a day off. A little embarrassed, Kim replied that he had stayed at an internet cafe. The truth is, the captain had expected such an answer. Knowing our protagonist, he handed him a key to a place he could stay if needed. The captain's parents used to live in this apartment, but it's vacant at the moment since they had to travel for work. The place is completely clean because the captain visits the apartment on his days off. Receiving this favor, the protagonist felt embarrassed, saying it wasn't necessary. But the captain insisted, even giving our boy the address, because staying there is much better than staying in an internet cafe. Kim noticed the location is in the Chunshin district, which wasn't too bad for him. Returning to his office, the captain told the protagonist to take the key anyway, even if he didn't want to stay in the apartment, and wished the boy a good day off. Now our protagonist doesn't know what to do. Back in the office, the captain began to read the protagonist's file. Something that caught his attention was the fact that the boy's parents are missing. This makes the captain think that the protagonist is a poor, pitiful soul. Now we are brought back to the present, to the captain's family portrait. After looking at it, the protagonist gave a faint smile, as if he liked that family. But now he needs to leave, as there are urgent matters to attend to. The first thing the protagonist did was catch a bus. Finally, he is walking the city streets, in search of his objective. From the rumors he'd heard, he knew this dungeon was located in an abandoned school. The area within a 1-kilometer radius had also been cordoned off. Before long, Kim found some army soldiers on security detail, but they weren't from his squad. They were just regular soldiers. This made infiltration much easier for our protagonist, who decided to move across the rooftops. He easily bypassed their security. Eventually, he found the entrance to the dungeon, the Great Blue Portal. Approaching it, Kim wondered what kind of creature he would find on the other side. Actually, the shadow droplet skill should have provided this information, as that's part of its function. If the situation was too dangerous, Kim decided he would just leave. Inside the gate, there were several trees, but none of them had leaves. Our boy was walking through a kind of dark forest. He quickly noticed the humidity was very high. During his walk, he came across something strange. A broken sword was lying on the ground. Examining the object, Kim thought a battle might have happened here. While still crouching, Kim sensed something else in the area. Looking back, he spoke to someone hiding in the trees, saying their presence was too obvious and they should reveal themselves. Just then, a dangerous creature emerged from the shadows, a large goblin, which would have terrified anyone else, but our protagonist remained unfazed. He noticed his enemy was unusually large, much bigger than the average goblin. It's amazing the investigation team made it back alive after encountering something this dangerous. The fight between them began. The goblin took the initiative, lunging at the protagonist, but its strike wasn't fast enough to hit him. Thanks to that, Kim found an opening. He landed a devastating blow to the poor creature's head, but right after the impact, Kim was very surprised. His enemy was still perfectly healthy. The blow didn't even break its teeth. Annoyed by the creature's resilience, Kim landed an enhanced kick to its mouth. Gaining some distance, Kim realized this monster was a bit too tough. After taking 2 powerful hits, it was still alive. Thinking about what to do, he had to back away from the creature's attacks, but he quickly warned it to be careful. Just then, Kim had used his corruption ability on the ground. When the creature stepped on that spot, its feet began to sink. Now that its movement was restricted, it became a sitting duck for the protagonist. This time, he managed to land several blows on the enemy's face. Taking advantage of the monster's durability, Kim was using this opportunity to blow off some steam. As he was about to strike one of the creature's ribs, something unexpected happened. The monster blocked the attack and tried to counter. It hit our protagonist square in the face. Although it wasn't fatal, it wasn't enough to push our boy back. Kim noticed that his clothes were slightly torn. After that, he once again saw the broken sword lying on the ground. Kim decided to pick it up. Until now, all the monsters he had defeated were like ants to him, but this incompetent fool before him could be compared to a beetle. The creature began to roar furiously. It charged at the protagonist again, determined to end his life. But this time, it was the monster who was surprised. It managed to grab the protagonist's face, but nothing happened. Kim told the creature that at the end of the day, a bug is still just a bug. Now, it was time for it to receive its wonderful reward. Completely enraged, Kim plunged the broken sword into the creature's flesh, all because it had ruined his new coat. The goblin began to scream in deep agony, but the protagonist's venting session wasn't over yet. He was ready to kick his enemy once more, and now he would do it with great dedication and enthusiasm. Finally, the large creature's life was forcibly removed from its body, and our protagonist could absorb the demonic energy that was in its body. He received some points for it, unlocking a new skill, Black Arrow, while his shadow droplet ability was strengthened. Our protagonist is quite satisfied with these achievements. Looking at his status window, he saw he had 22 points of demonic energy, and some interesting skills. The black arrow is made of energy and cannot be touched. Additionally, he received the basic swordsmanship skill, which will make his fights easier. A ranged attack is really amazing, but our boy didn't understand why he got a sword skill. Then he remembered he finished the creature with a sword strike. The hit must have been a critical, which is why he received that reward. However, this made our protagonist think even more. Perhaps that creature was already injured when they started fighting. He still had the feeling that he was being watched by something. But the protagonist turned his attention to more pressing matters, examining the creature's carcass. This time he seemed to have found something really interesting. No, he didn't find a miraculous item or anything like that. It was just a piece of metal. It looked like an arrowhead, or maybe a fragment of the broken sword. Kim tried to imagine if the investigation team had done this. The more he looked at the blade, the more he realized it felt somewhat familiar. But our boy didn't have time to think about it. Other monsters were approaching, which wasn't exactly a bad thing, since he had just acquired new skills that needed to be tested immediately. So he would welcome these creatures with great enthusiasm, as they would be his test subjects. The goblins looked at our protagonist with hatred, ready to end his life, all while our boy was concentrating evil energy in both hands. It was time to see just how violent his skills could be. He fired the black arrows towards the poor creatures. 2 of them already hit the ground, stinking, while the last one was terrified. The protagonist's main objective was already complete, but he could stay a little longer, just for fun. The remaining creature realized its last moments would be filled with anguish, since our protagonist wasn't going to let this opportunity slip away. Outside the portal, life was going on as usual, until a mysterious man decided to step out from within. Kim was feeling quite confident after clearing that dungeon. With his eyes shining in a peculiar way, he realized he could take this game to a whole new level. Elsewhere, a battalion of soldiers was marching across an open field. From the look in their eyes, they all seemed very tired. Our protagonist was among them, thinking his last day off had been more interesting and satisfying than he expected. Besides collecting demonic energy, he got to play his favorite game. He returned full of joy. He noticed his platoon was exhausted. They didn't want to enter a tin can type dungeon. They hated this training. Right now, the captain was leading them all. Several platoons were scattered around in random positions. The objective of the training was to reach the center. Knowing the map of the area, the captain was leading his troops toward the objective. Along the way, he began to hear dangerous sounds, so he told his platoon to prepare for battle. They had to take their positions. It was all part of the training. They needed to learn how to react in emergencies. Some in the platoon were determined, ready to join in on this great fun. Small black balls were approaching them all, but these weren't ordinary balls. They were monsters with huge mouths and sharp teeth. Knowing what they were, the captain told his soldiers not to use their melee weapons. It was time to let the firearms sing. The soldiers were already taking firing positions. The elite squad was ready to storm the compound, and for our protagonist, this was the most fun training of his entire life. The captain's order sounded like music to him. They could fire at will. Our boy started sending his bullets toward the targets. The poor dark balls didn't stand a chance. They were being completely annihilated by the heavy fire. While the creatures were finding out if there's life after death, the platoon kept firing. The sergeant said these creatures can float, and that their skin is very tough, making melee combat difficult. They had to finish them off before they got any closer. Since there were so many of these balls, it was possible they wouldn't succeed. Finally, the captain realized the situation had changed. He ordered his troops to stop shooting. It was time to settle things the old-fashioned way. Only 3 orbs left. It'll be tough to beat them if they feed on human blood. The sergeant told his men not to get bitten. Kim knew the creature's bite was dangerous. If too many soldiers got hurt during this training, his score would plummet. One of the black orbs is ready to attack some useless extras, but our boy loves a good competition, and he can't let something like that happen. The creature continues its furious advance, but to its surprise, Kim has a powerful kick, stronger than Roberto Carlos in his prime. The soldiers can only watch as the creature is violently launched into the sky. It soared so high that the entire platoon was left in awe. Kim is having fun with this. It would have been much easier if he could use his shadow arrows. Now that the creature is isolated in the air, other soldiers can open fire on it, wiping the creature from existence. Our protagonist's strategy became very popular. The other 2 orbs were also kicked high into the air. The captain ordered his troops to eliminate the monsters. It was time to let the guns sing once more. In no time, the threat was completely eliminated. The troops are now safe. Due to the unexpected combat, they're taking a 10-minute break. During this time, the captain ordered the platoon to check their personal equipment. Any injuries must be reported immediately. Right after the announcement, the captain approaches our protagonist to congratulate him. The other soldiers who copied the strategy are just as happy. That includes our boy's friend and Roberval the creep. For now, he still hasn't been genuinely accepted. After getting a sharp look, Roberval slowly backed away. Other recruits in the platoon are getting pretty tired. The red-haired kid thinks this training is harder than the last one. They've already been through several fights. His companion has already lost count. In fact, he heard rumors that this dungeon isn't some low-level cakewalk. This terrified the red-haired kid. Then, the extra mentioned that a boss creature lived in this place. By the time the soldiers discovered it, something incredible had already happened. Colonel Mustache had already ended the creature's life, and he did it using only his bare hands and a handkerchief to clean up afterward. In his presence, the soldiers are terrified, but Colonel Mustache did it for a reason. Now that the boss is defeated, the army can use this place for training. Apparently, the boss creature was just imprisoned. It's still alive, which is why the dungeon remains active. Their conversation was cut short by the sergeant, who came to tell the two slackers that the break was over. It's time for them to get back to the drill. Our protagonist overheard the whole conversation and is growing more and more impressed by Colonel Mustache's skills. Exhausted, the platoon keeps moving forward, with the two non-stop talkers being dragged along by the sergeant. Arriving at a new position, the captain noticed something. He was completely terrified. His troops still don't understand what happened, and our protagonist soon discovered why everyone froze. It's Colonel Mustache. He's also inside the training dungeon. Hanging from his neck is a necklace with a sign that says he's injured. But looking at the men, Colonel Mustache gave a wide grin. He doesn't look sick at all. Without warning, we're taken to another world. An old man is calmly smoking his cigarette, thinking about life and the price of things, until he heard someone's footsteps. It's our protagonist's trainer, that large, masked man. While still puffing on his cigarette, the old man said the masked man had returned too soon. This can only mean he's already broken that item. Taking a sword from the trainer, the old man said things like this happened because he follows that woman's orders. Analyzing the blade, he noticed its condition was quite bad. The tip of the weapon was missing, a clear sign that the masked man had been hunting monsters again.